Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
I'm a fan of classic movies.
During the spookiest time of the year, there are a few guidelines all ghosts and goblins should follow. Always stay on sidewalks. Never go to a stranger's house. And never go out alone.
I'm the boogeyman! And I'm coming to get you!
You know nothing of hell.
Here, Flicker.
I'm tired of living in fear.
I'm back!
New to the neighborhood.
Trick or treat!
Trick or treat!
If you are thinking of seeing this film alone, don't.
Julia, let's get this show on the road.
Hello and welcome to Overlapping Dialogue, a podcast of audio commentaries dedicated to discussing cinema that fascinates us, in a way we hope fascinates you. We're your co-hosts, Kyle and Levi Huffman. I'm Kyle.
I'm Levi.
And here we are, and you heard a little bit of a spooky intro.
Spooky!
Yeah. So it's October.
Yeah.
This is dropping on October 1st, I believe.
Yeah.
And we thought we would, and I think we said this last time, we might do this every year, we might not. I don't know. It's our podcast, so anyway. We can decide.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. But if you would like to express any complaints,
investment. Thank you very much.
Feel free to email us at huffmanbrothersproductions@gmail.com. Again, that's huffmanbrothersproductions@gmail.com. And again, we're going to be spending all of Spooktober, October, whatever you call it, in your household.
I call it October. We call it Spooktober as a joke because
right.
I think that people that do that are ridiculous. But anyway, so if that's you, yeah, you're ridiculous. So anyway,
but all throughout October, we're going to be doing horror thriller-ish / a little bit of horror comedy in there too, all throughout this month. Being the child of Kimberly Huffman, fall holds a very special place in this household, and I deeply love it myself as well on a very deep level. It's my favorite of all the seasons. What does fall mean to you specifically, Levi, and also how do horror movies fit into your fall each and every year?
Well, fall's good because it's the end of summer. Summer's way too hot.
Cool down.
Yeah. As we all know, we'll do temperature checks here and there on me. It's getting cool.
Yeah, so good.
Sometimes that aggravates the allergies and kind of general well-being sometimes of myself as far as weather changes. But, once it gets figured out, it's always nice. Because, right now we're at that time of fall. We're getting real specific about weather stuff.
Yeah, who cares?
We're at that time of fall where the barometric pressure is changing up and down, and you've got, weather.
It started to get a little colder, but there's going to be some echoes of 80s
once it's
next week.
Past that time, which really can take into October, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Well, some people.
Yeah.
But, yeah, as far as the way horror movies fit into that, I mean, I'm one of those people that usually watches whatever movie I want whenever I want. I don't really, other than like Christmas movies, I do have a little bit of a trouble watching those other than during that time. But horror movies, that's a little bit different. I guess even if it is more Halloween themed, I guess I can watch it whenever I want to. But we have that freedom.
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
So we do usually watch some.
We probably watch an above average amount than what we normally do.
Yeah,
in terms of the rest of the year.
Especially with our family, we do. Yeah. We'll kind of watch some stuff and here and there on weekends. But as far as us personally, we're usually on a different timetable anyway, so it doesn't really affect it. But yes,
fall's my favorite season for a variety of reasons. One, just all the family memories I have associated with. It's just a great time with family. Football, full swing.
Of course,
fall movie season. Now, while it's oftentimes in the service of awards bait, still, you do get an above average amount of good movies come out in the fall.
You do in
most other times of the year.
Late winter and spring.
And in general, it's kind of the unofficial start to the holiday season you have with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming down the pike in the end of the year. So I really do genuinely love fall. And as far as how horror movies fit into that for me, I think we've talked about this in passing in past podcasts. I'm a bit of an agnostic when it comes to horror genre, but someone who is intrigued by its thrills at the same time.
Yeah.
There are great horror movies, like there are great any other kind of movies. But also, it's not a genre that if I'm just like, oh, what do I want to do tonight, is going to be my go-to first thing like it is for other people. I'm genuinely interested in why and how people want to be scared, and how it's like a sensation that is supposed to cause us disharm, yet people find comforting for some. And I'm not even saying that's a wholly bad thing. I think for some it can be a cathartic experience. But also
it relieves some tension in their life in some way. Kind of like how comedy movies. I mean, comedies and horror movies get compared all the time because they're kind of the polar opposites of each other. And that's why oftentimes I don't think that either you can put them together, like people always think that you can. I mean, there are some, but very few.
I think what the biggest similarity is that they are both primarily intended to inflict a gut reaction, a gut physical response, laughter or screams or terror, you know what I mean? And those are very physical things. When you watch like a quote sci-fi movie or a quote drama or a document, all these other mediums of cinema, they don't immediately elicit that same do this, do that. It's like very comforting, I guess, for people. And so I do think, though, and I'll say this, and this will offend horror fans, and I don't really care, that the horror genre has provoked a larger volume of trash than any other genre that's been. And now, again, every genre has its trash, so don't get it twisted. But we thought we'd pick some, and this is just a brief selection because there's a great many of other horror movies that we love or fascinated by.
These are ones we thought would be interesting.
Yeah, and so this, there's one in particular, one we'll talk about actually next week, that we're a little colder on, me maybe more than you, but still it's like not something that. But even in me not being such a big fan of it, it's still something that is wildly fascinating and very thought-provoking and interesting.
It's easy to say it's the most art house of the group, so we'll talk about why that is later.
Yeah, but so for our very first one, we're going to be hitting up Creepshow from, I usually write down
1982.
the year. Yeah, 1982, directed by George Romero, one of the masters of horror, written by another master of horror, Stephen King. So we'll be getting into that in here just a little bit. But first, we just gotta dive into
let's go.
That Blue Plate special.
Hi, Audrey. Hello, Emma. Have a cup of coffee, please. Sure.
I'll have what she's having.
Hey! Who wanted a large pepperoni? Coming up!
Order up.
Then the order is indeed up.
Sorry, I had to repeat it.
I
wasn't sure if everybody in the cafe could hear us, so I thought that guy, he was really working.
And we wanted to make sure to include that last little sound clip for all those country bearheads that are still out there sticking with us. So.
It's like in a classroom when you're trying to speak to everybody and nobody's listening. That one student is like, "Hey." Yeah. They're trying to talk like I was that person in that moment. So,
so we want to start off today We were saying R.I.P. to Norm Macdonald just last week. Now we're already saying it again. But this time to Melvin Van Peebles, who we actually talked a little bit about briefly back when Robert Downey Sr. had passed away. Yeah. I think we talked about that on the Escape from the Planet of the Apes pod a while back.
Because we kept staring at the DVD menu for so long.
And Richard Donner also, I think we talked about
that was
too.
at that time.
So Melvin Van Peebles recently just passed away. He actually had only turned 89 just in August. So he pretty recently celebrated a birthday. We also talked about... We grouped him together when we were talking about Robert Downey Sr. because they were both these kind of maverick icons of art house cinema of a particular era, like that cinema, 60s and 70s, early 70s era. And it's so strange because back a few months ago, the Criterion Collection had announced a set of some of his films that they were getting ready to put out. And it even has some new interviews with him on here. I'll be curious to watch this. And I literally just got this yesterday.
Yeah. So because it just got released like this week, right?
Yeah. So some of these films we've seen, some of them we haven't yet, that are just on this set alone. I'm holding in my hands right now. The Story of a 3-Day Pass, Watermelon Man, Sweet Sweetback, and Don't Play Us Cheap. All movies that he had something to do with, or directed, I should say. It also has some short films on here. Sunlight, 3 Pickup Men for Herrick, and Les Cinq Cent Ballets. So when you think of Melvin Van Peebles and what his movies, particularly the two we've seen, talking about Watermelon Man and Sweet Sweetback, mean in that moment of film, where do you even begin, I guess, to think about that?
I don't know. I mean, I'll start with Watermelon Man because, first of all, that's the movie we've seen most recent. It was the first of his movies.
Marginally more conventional.
And I can remember more about it because it didn't totally make my head explode. I think that's not even subtly, just is one of the most impressive studio movies I've ever seen. In the fact that it was seriously bought.
Yeah. Columbia, I think, put it out.
Columbia bought, paid for, and was enthusiastic about that, and it made money.
The fact that all those boxes were checked, is a miracle.
They wanted more, and he was like, "No,"
and he was kind of turned off by that. He was, and then went to make Sweet Sweetback in response to that.
Yeah, and we talked about that, a little bit in the past, but that's literally about this racist white man basically turns black overnight, and about what that it's like the metamorphosis, basically the Franz Kafka story, but that. And you would think something like that would have to be made eventually, and you would think, though, that something like that would be made by somebody like Stanley Kramer,
Yeah.
Or somebody like that it would just be a really basic, kind of stupid, infantile version of, like, real serious, and it is not at all. I mean, it is actually serious.
It's very irreverent,
but it is so funny. Mm-hmm. And I mean... thankfully a black filmmaker made it because it feels like some old white guy could have made it at that time and been like, got all the pats on their back and said, "What a progressive white man you are."
No disrespect to Otto Preminger.
No,
I'm just putting that in the context
Stanley Kramer necessarily,
or that.
But
but with Stanley Kramer movies, some of those social issues movies, some of which I like, there's always like a punch that's being pulled. Ultimately, it's not really quite as mean or as it needs to be about the subject matter, and he doesn't pull any punches.
Well, and we've talked about this in the past about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, that the movie positions itself as really, progressive, but it's like, but still the movie is acting like, well, this is a problem we're going to have to deal with, and it's like, well, maybe if you weren't latently racist, it wouldn't be a problem. You know what I mean?
I feel weird because that is certainly reflected in reality.
Yeah, it is.
But I feel like the movie itself is not propelling that forward any more than it could. But again, with Van Peebles, there's no punches pulled, and with Watermelon Man especially.
And I think there's a point to that movie that it's saying, okay, these supposedly progressive Democrat parents are kind of reacting like, oh, wait. But it's actually,
but when it affects our daughter,
so I think that's interesting, but there's still something about the movie that doesn't get all the way there. But anyway, so, and the ending of that movie is just like, I mean, the ending of Sweet Sweetback is its own madness, but the final image of Watermelon Man, you said when we watched it, you described it as look at this. You're gonna have to look at this.
Yeah.
And it's just like what? And that's a really pretty amazing. Probably one of my so many favorite movies I've seen this year. And so far, it was made in the 1970 or whenever. But
Yeah.
And as far as Sweet Sweetback goes, I mean, you can speak a lot more about that movie. I've only seen it once, and you've seen it twice, but
3 times
or 3 times, yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a movie that I like, but I don't know what to say about. I mean, it is what it is in a way. You wrote a whole paper about this, so you can kind of talk about it. But people think that Easy Rider was so revolutionary when actually it's not really when you really get down to it. But that is just another level of like wow. And that was in itself an art house success.
It was it was actually a big financial success, and and again, part of the success of The Watermelon Man that scared him was that he felt like he was saying something that most studio movies never got to say, and he felt like the studios were not necessarily co-opting Watermelon Man, but would co-opt future works from him, I think was what he was thinking.
Yes.
And was thinking, well, I don't want anything to do with this. He was kind of, it's like you shoot somebody dead in the street and the cops applaud and watch you do it. And it's just like, wait, what? Like, you're supposed to be... Anyways.
Yeah.
And so he goes off and makes Sweet Sweetback, which he's not only directs, acts, produces, everything. And again, that whole movie kind of, begins in terms of like this dedication that it has at the very beginning. I'm going to find that here real quick. But what's so shocking about Sweet Sweetback is the fact that it actually did break through and was a success, because I could easily see that being a movie that was seen by some people, but then eventually fell by the wayside and, was not all that much of a widely seen thing. But it actually was a huge success when it came out. And it's coming out in the midst of the civil rights movement had essentially kind of came to a unfortunate end, and the Black Power movement was still a thing, but much more was not nearly as interested in the sense of reconciliation in many ways that King was from earlier. But again, the movie begins with a dedication of him as he's like looking back to this black void, and it's like a freeze frame that zooms in on the shot, and the dedication at the beginning of the movie says, "This film is dedicated to all the brothers and sisters who had enough of the man."
And there's like capitalized brothers and the first, like they are,
and the man
big nouns.
It's also capitalized,
right?
And I've seen the movie 3 times. Part of my joy of getting this box set is that I've just seen some stills from the 4K remaster or restoration, which it says here was approved by him. And I'm just so excited to see that, because I've only ever seen it on crappy DVD versions.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it once by myself for the first time in college, and just being like, what is this? It was like literally an atom bomb blew up in my mind. And I've never really since had a movie I've watched that I didn't, quote, give any star rating on Letterboxd. That's the only movie still that I'm like, I don't know what to give this, because it's just so something. I don't know what it is. I saw it again for a third world counter cinema class I had in college, and I could tell I was the only person other than the instructor who had seen it before. And there were a few walkouts I remember, and that was a weird class. It's like, let me just go off on a brief aside about this. That third world counter cinema class was like on Wednesday nights in the fall, from like 4:30 to 8:30. So you're literally seeing like some of the most challenging cinema you'll ever see at that time slot. It's just like a very tough hang sometimes. And that one wasn't, because I'd seen it already and was familiar with it, but some other ones, whew, boy. And just like seeing it with a crowd, the crowd that it was a really cool experience, just in terms of hearing people laugh and be shocked by it. And then I think we had watched it together some years ago. And again, I wrote a paper about it in that third world counter cinema class on its relation to Easy Rider. How Easy Rider was kind of positioned as this big kind of art house hit, and oh, look at New Hollywood, here it comes. And that by contrast, Sweet Sweetback was a movie that kind of got like, oh, it's the first blaxploitation movie, and then all the blaxploitation movies come out of that there's never any movie that you would call a blaxploitation movie nearly as radical as that is, though.
Yeah.
That's by far like the most radical thing.
Yeah.
And
because a lot of those blaxploitation movies took a lot from the like 30s gangster picture
and
like,
repurposed
right.
it.
And so like that isn't that at all. It's strange. It's almost like a superhero movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot of things, but that's what I normally think of it as in a way.
And Easy Rider and there's a high likelihood we'll do Easy Rider on this podcast one day because it's a movie that fascinates us more than we really like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not horrible exactly, but it has horrible things about it, I would say, too, though. But that movie's position is this big new thing when in actuality it was like the evolution of the Corman AIP biker film that got repurposed into slightly something different and even had a lot of the same talent that come out of those movies. Peter Fonda, Jack Nicholson, Dennis
and it was made
Hopper.
after the fact, but even a movie like The Trip reminds me a lot of Easy Rider. I think there became an intent in the Corman films to be like, let's make these acid movies,
right? And
so in some ways, even though it was made by BBS and came out of people who came out of Corman, at the same time, Easy Rider is a little bit different in the sense that, okay, it does feel like it is really trying to be something, but it just isn't. But it still does feel like some of those other movies, like Psych Out or especially The Trip.
Yeah,
but
but again, a lot of people from privileged backgrounds or people who had a career in Hollywood, especially Peter Fonda being the son of Henry Fonda, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has this white kind of privileged version of being this outcast loner guy.
Yeah.
Melvin Van Peebles is very much a self-made man who kind of did all this on his own and adds this sense of authenticity. And again, something I always talk about is the very end of that movie. It's almost like a promise that Sweetback's coming back and he's going to burn it all to the ground. And then, of course, in some ways that was setting up a sequel that never came to pass. Yeah. It almost, to me, and again, in the midst of the Black Power movement at that time, is a warning. Like you said, he's almost like a super heroic figure that he will one day come back and wreak havoc that we've never seen before.
Do your thing, as the song tells us in the movie.
So, it's just one of those movies I love to recommend to people and just see if they give it a chance.
The opening, if you get past the first 10 minutes, you can watch anything in your life. People said that about that first episode of The Nick when it came out. I've always thought that about that movie. I'm not even going to discuss what it is.
Yeah.
It is not fit for minds, and God would not like me to describe it. So, but anyway.
But it should be said, he lived to be 89 years old. He hadn't made movies in a long time. His son, Mario Van Peebles, is kind of his own actor.
Made New Jack City.
Which, do you remember there's a scene where that's playing in the background? Of
right.
And he even made a movie about the making of Sweetback. I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but I don't remember.
And he starred in it as his father, and they were very close. So, again, we've only seen 2 movies from him, but they've both made very seismic immediate
They only
impressions.
can. Especially, like I said, I think Sweetback is so impressive that it is in its own other league of movie, and that it just so shocked me. I'd have, honestly, less to think about it. Like, the mind can't contain it in a way to even analyze it, but Watermelon Man I really quite enjoyed.
It actually says that movie that his son made about him is actually on this.
Oh, really?
Set. It says also including the set is, so it's in there.
What's it called?
It's part of the title, the full title of this movie.
Okay. That part of it we're not going to say, yes.
Yeah, but you can very quickly look and find out. Melvin Van Peebles, rest in peace. Again, it's very strange that they had just had this set getting ready to come out and then his passing. So, rest in peace.
Run feet, do your thing.
Melvin Van Peebles.
Yeah.
Something...
Another death of sorts.
Another death of the creative soul. I don't know how long we're going to talk about this story.
I don't want to talk about this very long.
But there's a news story that dropped this week. And normally I don't read directly from press releases. Normally we read Variety or Hollywood Reporter articles.
We were actually riding back from Asheville when we were getting caught up on our stuff for the week.
Our goodies.
Little goodies, as Marlon Brando said in Last Tango in Paris. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Netflix acquires iconic Roald Dahl story company. A Netflix press release. Like I said, we never normally read the press releases. It's like we read it on Hollywood Reporter reports it or something.
Right.
But
this isn't all that long. I just want to go ahead and read this
Go
whole thing.
ahead,
And
why
you can,
not? It's hilarious.
And if you want to just stop and give a running comment or commentary, please feel free. We're excited to announce the Roald Dahl story company, RDSC, and Netflix are joining forces to bring some of the world's most loved stories to current and future fans in creative new ways.
Stop right there. RDSC? What is this? Like a Mad Men like advertising company or something? Like,
Roald Dahl Draper Prize.
Yeah. Anyway,
this acquisition builds on the partnership we started 3 years ago to create a slate of animated TV series. For example, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Taika Waititi and Academy Award nominator Phil Johnston are currently working on a series based on the world of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. In addition, we're working with Sony and working title on an adaptation of Matilda the Musical.
Wait a minute. Go back up.
Yes.
Academy Award winning. What did he win?
Did he win
screenplay for Jojo Rabbit?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's right. Anyway, move
These
on.
projects opened our eyes to a much more ambitious venture. The creation of a unique universe across animated and live-action films and TV, publishing, games, immersive experiences, live theater, consumer products, and more. There's always and more,
Hang
by the
on.
way. You know,
they just said consumer products in something that... I know that yeah, because, by the way, we can talk about this. At the very bottom, it says something about a note to editors that edit this thing. So clearly this isn't necessarily totally intended towards just everyday people, but you can look this stuff up. Mm-hmm. And it just said consumer products.
Yeah.
Like, they think I'm dumb enough to not realize this is all a big capitalist game, right?
Yeah.
Like, totally shameful. Anyway, continue.
Roald Dahl's
Live
books.
theater, by the way. What the hell is that going to be? But anyway.
Roald Dahl's books have been translated into 63 languages and sold more than 300 million copies worldwide, with characters like Matilda, the BFG. I can still never wrap my head around that's a thing.
The BFG?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic
stupid.
Mr. Fox, Willy Wonka. And
the LFG?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the Twits, delighted generation of children and adults. These stories and their messages of the power and possibility of young people have never felt more pertinent. Any thoughts or comments on any of that? No?
Not so far.
As we bring these timeless tales to more audiences and new formats, we're committed to maintaining their unique spirit and their universal themes of surprise and kindness, and also sprinkling some fresh magic into the mix.
I want to say something here.
Wait, universal themes of surprise. I love the theme of surprise.
What is this?
Okay,
like?
so kindness, clearly that's like a theme.
But is this like the Sony leaks where they had like blue,
themes,
color blue, like
for the Smurf stuff.
backpacks, like, you know,
and all of them are like family.
Theme of surprise, like what?
So again, kindness, okay.
But I love it when they're like
surprise.
into the mix. Like what is this? Like he was running in the street era? Like what are you talking about? Like we'll get to that movie eventually.
We want to say a huge thank you to all the people who have.
By the way, this is
the great
him
story
reading
so
it,
far.
not us thanking you. Yeah.
Looking ahead, we're excited to continue the close working relationships between the RDSC with it sounds like a daggum
like a CDC or something.
Well, it almost sounds like a Nazi re-education program or something.
Yeah,
like established by the RDSC in an existing
Nazi
rights holders.
re-education program. Yeah. I mean, it might as well
like
be.
within Nazi Germany, had they won and they like went in and set up the RDSC in every major
you're talking
nation,
about
like,
okay,
to
yes.
like re-educate them in the Nazi ways or
All
whatever.
right. Their Nazi ways.
Yeah. Existing rights holders, publishing, theater, and entertainment partners, and many others to protect and grow the great legacy of these beloved stories. There is a moment in James and the Giant Peach when the ladybird says, "We are now about to visit the most marvelous places and see the most wonderful things." The centipede replies, "There is no knowing what we shall see." Netflix and the Roald Dahl Story Company share a deep love of storytelling and a growing global fan base. Together, we have an extraordinary opportunity to write multiple new chapters of these beloved stories, delighting children and adults around the world for generations to come. Notes.
Real quickly, centipede.
Yeah.
Giant tropical centipedes share their territories with tarantulas. Despite its impressive length, it's a nimble navigator. and some can be highly venomous. As quick as lightning, just like the tarantula it's killing, the centipede has 2 curved, hollow fangs which inject paralyzing venom. Even tarantulas aren't immune from an ambush. This centipede is a predator. Centipede.
Centipede. I mean, it is. Hey, that sounds kind of like a Halloweenish Spooktober kind of thing.
Notes to editors. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Completion of this transaction is subject to regulatory approvals and other customary closing conditions.
Sorry, I had to have that after Centipede, but
thoughts on all this?
It's weird because it's not a surprise, and yet it is. I mean, I guess it makes sense that somebody should be buying this whole thing.
Yeah.
But
why, though?
Well, I don't know. I mean, my favorite thing he ever did was write the screenplay to You Only Live Twice.
Maybe this means they'll just readapt that movie. And then, not really, because I know that Bond rights are tied up. But yeah, this is what's so weird, and this happens over and over again. When you have these very idiosyncratic creators, Walt Disney, Roald Dahl,
Dr. Seuss.
I was thinking, even to an extent, he's still alive, but like George Lucas or when you have people who Jim Henson was a big one. That you have these people that create these very loved worlds that people love these characters from and all this. What happens when they quote pass away, or in George Lucas's case, move on?
Yeah,
you get what's essentially amounts to versions of fan fiction. I mean, you could even talk about this with some roundabout way comic book characters too. I think this could fit into that. That you honestly get more, less like sprinkle in that magic pixie dust or that into the mix, like that magic. But really, we're just retelling the same stories with a fresh coat of paint. Is ultimately what happens here. And I'm not like some Roald Dahl completionist, but undoubtedly, I mean, Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Fantastic Mr. Fox, like all of these things have had very successful lives in the minds of the culture over the last several decades. And it's just, and something like Fantastic Mr. Fox, the movie that was directed by Wes Anderson in stop motion, is a really great example of someone taking something else, and it's not exactly their whole thing, but Wes Andersonizing the whole thing, where it's like it feels like a really beautiful, strange, surreal marriage of these two things,
right.
And undoubtedly, I just feel as though Netflix's version of it is going to be a copy and paste algorithmic version of trying to recreate all these things for the quote next generation of fans.
Yeah. Because if they really wanted to do, and I don't know, I haven't read the original Charlie and Chocolate Factory or Charlie and the Glass Elevator or whatever, those first 2 books. Haven't read those. But if I had, I might would know whether or not the Wonka bars and Wonka tickets look like they do in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know if they do, but the press release made a very big point about showing us that imagery to the point where I'm like, they're
got a golden ticket. Yeah. You got a favorite song in that movie?
Probably Pure Imagination. Genuinely.
Yeah.
Not so genuinely. Probably Golden Ticket or Candyman.
The Candyman can.
And, but
that song was in the opening credits of
Candyman. Cheer up, Charlie.
Yeah.
But anyway, or I Want It Now.
Oh, yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Where are we at?
Just dragging on this piece of trash idea.
But anyway, it seems like that is just copying that imagery. Yeah. I don't know. Again, email us at
Huffman Brothers
Productions at gmail.com. All you Roald Dahl heads out there.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's just going to copy that. It's kind of like the thing about, you said this before, speaking of, we're going to be talking about him here in a little bit. Stephen King hating The Shining, right? The Stanley Kubrick version. Yet supporting Dr. Sleep, the movie version of his book.
Well, he wrote the novel version. And
but being like, oh yeah, this is good. But it heavily traffics in the imagery of The Shining, the movie.
Yeah.
Not his version of Stephen King's The Shining on TV. The original one.
Right.
And it's like...
It's clear contradiction,
do you like it or not?
You're
like making money on this, clearly, and liking it. So, anyway, that's a complicated situation.
But this whole thing is... You've almost seen a version of it, even with Stephen King, who's obviously still very much alive and with us and making new things. With the... what's the show, the Hulu show?
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock.
Yeah.
That was an interesting example of like trying to, I guess, take, and I didn't even make it through the whole first season of that.
No, I didn't either.
Like trying to take his stories and re-amalgamate them and mash them up together. And it's weird because Stephen King has been around for so long already and is, again, still very much active, an active presence. But we already know versions of this are going to happen in the decades to come after he's already passed on, and when it comes, when it
oh Lord,
comes to
it's
taking it,
and when he's really gone, who knows what'll happen? I mean,
and those rights are so probably all over the place, anyways. I would imagine. I don't even know how all that works.
You're gonna have like the main character of Thinner and the dog in Cujo like fighting each other to death or something.
I guess this is all gonna. There's undoubtedly gonna be some shared universe of all this stuff.
Well, this all is weird too because he shares his universe through the Dark Tower. That the Dark Tower ultimately links all of his works together.
Oh yeah, I was in my head transitioning and talking about back to Roald Dahl too, but very much that.
That's what I'm saying. So he already has done that. So yes, this
I'm saying this Netflix thing is undoubtedly going to have these connected things or whatever.
So go down this little rabbit hole, Alice. Except that I didn't write that like Roald Dahl. Anyway.
But you tried to.
But you tried to write it, Roald Dahl. Anyway.
Roald Dahl, by the way, that name.
He's British, isn't he?
I think
he's
so,
English,
yeah.
so.
Anyway. Stupid idea.
Yeah.
Like, why? And there was a second where we were genuinely confused. Wait a minute. Does this include the Timothy Chalamet, Levi's son?
Yeah.
His biological son, check the records. His Wonka version, the Wonka origin story. I think that's being developed at Warner Brothers.
By the way,
it's not.
I want to make it clear now. I love Timothy Chalamet. He is my son. I don't want to see that movie. I do not want to see his version of Willy Wonka. It's going to be foolish. It's like watching your child fall down. It's like, you got to let them learn, but, don't do that. And you're like, oh, God.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't watch. You know?
And as someone,
whatever.
As two guys who are fans of Chalamet in general, and he's so early in his career, who knows. But, and we'll see with Dune coming out very soon, but it's like him doing his version of something that was already done before, not so well, by the way, but by the Kyle MacLachlan, David Lynch version. And now it's like, oh, do your version, which it should be said, Wonka's already been redone once.
Do your thing.
Already been done once with Jonathan Dett and Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which for all its problems was being its own thing in a lot of ways.
That was more different than the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in a lot of ways than it... I mean, it still used a lot of that imagery, but it did work to do other things and try to be more of an adaptation of the book, supposedly.
Yeah.
But, yes.
But I really hope Chalamet doesn't get caught into just doing these, you got to be in this blockbuster, you got to do this, you know what I mean? I hope he doesn't get too caught up in that. And it's too early to really tell, but... no. Why do we need any of this? It's all garbage. Moving on, a movie that is not garbage that we saw just this week we want to talk a little bit about. Deep Cover, from director Bill Duke, starring Lawrence Fishburne.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're big fans of crime movies in general, and have in recent little year plus been watching more early 90s crime movies. Yeah. In particular, a lot of the Abel Ferrara stuff, like King of New York, Bad Lieutenant. And this certainly fits into that, though Bill Duke directed it.
And then also, we just mentioned it earlier, but New Jack City.
New Jack City also as well. And I really love that generation of crime movie. It's in many ways taking a lot of things about, again, earlier what we were mentioning, kind of the classic gangster genre of the Warner Brothers films of the 30s and 40s, and repurposing that, retooling that for kind of a newer, more hip hop fueled generation of the early '90s. How for you does Deep Cover fit into that kind of those tradition of films? Those
well, other than Bad
stuff?
Lieutenant, I think it's the best
out
of those. Which Bad Lieutenant and that I think are so close that I'm not really sure which is better. I like Bad Lieutenant a little more, but
I think for me, I like Bad Lieutenant a little more, and I think it's just a touch better. Mostly because of the lead performance from Harvey Keitel is genuinely this grand artistic statement of what a train wreck of an individual that is, but also is trying to search some sense of redemption.
And what I like about both of those is that they're actually pretty archly moral and religious. Even Bad Lieutenant, even a little more than Deep Cover, and yet is even more immoral with its imagery. But that Deep Cover also is a very like questions about the that one Clarence Williams III, who also passed away not too long ago, rest in peace. Character where he's like he's like a cop, but he's a priest or something. It never really explained that, but that he's constantly questioning Lawrence Fishburne, like, "Are you a Christian or whatever?" And he's like, "No," or whatever. But by the end, it's like, oh, maybe he is. I don't know. But anyway, I think, and with Bad Lieutenant also, are very, like I said, moral movies, even in the midst of all this immorality that's going on. Like I said, about redemption in that way. I mean, and for me, I've always liked Lawrence Fishburne. Okay, I've never been that actually crazy about him. I think he was good in the Matrix movies, and he's good very early on in Apocalypse Now, and he's kind of transitioned now into being like, oh, he's in the John Wick movies, and he's in just these very basic kind of whatever.
He's in Predators.
But I thought he was really great. He's a little more toned down, especially compared to like King of New York, which is a really great performance, but it's just very over the top. And in this, it's very serious, and some people would laugh at it maybe because it's almost too serious, but he just felt toned down in a way that I appreciated. I think I wrote my review of it. It kind of reminded me of like and he narrates the movie, which I normally have problems with stuff like that in movies because it's trying to be this neo-noir, like, oh, well, let me tell you about this thing that happened when she walked in, as Phil Hartman once said, as Chick Hazard. But the a lot of these try to do that, but this actually was interesting. I think I said, let me find exactly what I said in my review. Let me promote myself a little bit. I want to remember exactly what it was I said, though. I said, like Harrison Ford's bored monologues in Blade Runner, but distilled in motor oil and run through a cracked dictaphone. Like, it reminded me a lot of the kind of boredness of Harrison Ford's narration for Blade Runner that he had to make that's not in other versions of the movie, but it was in the original theatrical cut, that neither he or Ridley Scott wanted to do it, but the studio forced him to. But it's like that, but it's like actually good.
Well, it has a world weariness about it, and it kind of knows the whole arc of the story. Even he's ahead of us. He knows where the whole thing's going in a way that we don't. And there's just this measured patience to the whole thing.
Because most narrations are supposed to be that, but they rarely are. And I think that it really works. Where even something like Goodfellas with Ray Liotta's narration in that, I don't think works as much as it should, because it's trying to show off and be kind of glitzy and like, I had it all, and now it's all over. I mean, it's trying to be a little bit.
In that movie is a lot more reactive to what is going on screen directly. And Fishburne's in Deep Cover has this sense of, again, past tense removed.
Like
to the
he's
whole
looking
thing.
at the whole story, like he's seen it all in one kind of tapestry rather than like going through like
beat for beat
a museum piece or something. Like you're going through different. So like. In that sense, I mean, that sounds like just one random thing to talk about, but I think that's one thing that works about it.
It was very memorable.
And
also the pairing of him and Jeff Goldblum in the movie is a very odd.
And that's one of the weirdest Jeff Goldblum performances. In fact, maybe probably the weirdest Jeff Goldblum performance, which is saying something.
Well, that's just not a type of movie he's normally in,
right.
because you normally associate him being in something kind of like a sci-fi movie, whether it be like Jurassic Park or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Fly, or like, or even like the more recent Thor movie.
Yeah.
And it's all about his weirdness, but it's like that in the midst of this gritty crime movie, which is not normally the environment you see him in.
And it's funny because he's just like kind of like a lawyer who happens to be a drug dealer,
and it keeps escalating.
Right. So he has this like cachet to himself, but and he's really weird, but it's in these ways that aren't like they normally are, like in Jurassic Park, which is only a year after this, interestingly. My favorite scene was where he's making that guy jump out of the car.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, adios, get the blank out. Like, he keeps like yelling at him. That's an interesting performance. But yeah, and as far as the direction was amazing. I really always loved Bill Duke as an actor. Really great in Commando and Predator, which are movies that are kind of but he's really good in them in a little bit. I mean, him and Predator, anytime kind of voice.
I know that there's a great really little
director too.
There's a great little AFI conversation. I think it was from like 2018 with Elvis Mitchell was the guy who was interviewing Fishburne and Duke, and I had no idea that like Duke had that much experience directing a lot of TV before that point, and that working in TV and doing these quick setups and getting things done super quick because you just got to like really sharpen his sense of a director. And there's a whole generation of directors that come from a similar background. Richard Donner, we talked about in the past,
and Sidney Lumet,
a little bit too.
Yeah.
So. And it makes you honestly want to go out and seek more Bill Duke movies because he's and it's just got this, because it feels contemporary to King of New York or to New Jack City. But all three of those, what I love about them is that they're very clearly made from a particular director, and all three of them have these very particular colors they work with. Even looking at Lawrence Fishburne's performance also, I mean, you think about him in King of New York versus him in this. I mean, it's worlds apart, different characters and performances.
Yeah.
And a good example of like, he's like, actor of color at that time. You only get so many shots to be, quote, the lead of a movie, and you're playing like a, quote, ethnic criminal part. But even within that, he just is able to, he's such a good actor. He can
it kind of reminds me of like
speak of both of those characters.
Alternate turn on its head version of it. I mean, it just came out, but Red, White, and Blue, the Steve McQueen film part of the Small Axe movies, which there's nothing wrong with. It's quite good, especially for something John Boyega's in. But no offense, but I mean and he's good in the movie. He's fine, But that movie is all about this kind of sense of betrayal of a black man becoming a Bobby, and like that it's a racist system, and it's like, why are you part of that? Whereas in this, it's kind of about that, but it asks some of those questions, but it's far less obvious about it, while also just being a better, kind of more fun. I mean, I know they're two totally different things, but like, that just reminded me of that.
But in many ways, the system is turning him into the type of person that it wants to get rid of, and it's just the contradictions inherent to that.
And the movie he figures himself out by the end of the movie, so like it's fine.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, I mean, it's just good.
Great movie. I don't know if it's streaming on Criterion Channel right now. I know it recently came out on the Blu-ray, through the Criterion Collection, Blu-ray and DVD. So if you have a chance, check it out. I know that it was always kind of had fell by the wayside, and it was in recent years it's kind of gained more and more of a cult following. But terrific stuff.
Yeah.
So on to our Spooktober Spectacular. Dun dun dun. So, Creepshow from 1982. And there's a lot of things to talk about with this movie because this movie involves a lot of moving parts and a lot of things we're interested in. So, Levi, give us a rundown of what this movie's deal is.
All right. Creepshow is a 1982 American horror comedy anthology film directed by George A. Romero and written by Stephen King, making this film his screenwriting debut. That's also important to note. So, I guess I can go through I can talk kind of about It's an anthology movie. And we can talk more about this later. It's based on that kind of EC Comics, which don't forget was Roger Ebert mentioned this. I knew this was what's called originally educational comics.
Providing education, all right.
That's what he said. But it's just like these 5 different stories that I'm pretty sure. They're actually kind of original stories. That are kind of based in ideas about what
versions of stories.
They're like homages to those stories. So they actually are original.
I didn't get a chance to look at the whole production history of this movie. How did this whole thing start? I'm wondering.
I'm going to go and see.
Terms of...
Well, also, it's important to note that one of the stories, I'll go ahead and say, The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill, was actually based on a short story that Stephen King wrote called Weeds.
Yeah.
The production, it doesn't say here on Wikipedia about how it all came together, because I kind of wondered about that also. But I know that it says, it said at the top that actually, and of course we're going to talk about that Stephen King is in the movie as an actor. We'll talk about that later. But that his actual first acting debut was in the George Romero movie Night Riders, just a year before this.
So they I don't know if they met with that, but they certainly knew each other at least that far back.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, and I don't remember the year. I'm going to have to look it up. That there was this kind of horror fiction or horror media summit on Dick Cavett that had like George Romero, Stephen King, Peter Straub, and Ira Levin, and they're all smoking the whole time.
I've seen there's some old talk show clip I've seen before. I think it was John Landis, John Carpenter.
Yeah, now that was with Mick Garris.
Maybe Cronenberg too.
Yeah,
I've seen that. But Mick Garris.
Let me look up.
No, I don't think I've ever seen that before. And obviously, while you're looking that up, I mean, at this particular moment, Stephen King was
1980. So they would have met, before then.
So Stephen King was literally the guy for horror. I mean, and not much has changed in all these years, but like, he was on the top of the world in terms of his books being ultra successful. Even if he didn't like the movies themselves, them certainly being successes and making money, and certainly making more money for him too.
So therefore, that it all started on their shared love of that. I guess I'm not really sure.
Well,
how
certainly
it started, but
in the '80s in general, we've talked about this a little bit even with Clue. You're starting to see more, and the way nostalgia works, it usually works in 30, 40-year cycles. At this time, there was a lot of 50s nostalgia and across the board in the culture. I mean, Ronald Reagan was president for crying out loud. So, this whole idea of going back to the past, and certainly to make a Creepshow movie at this point that was taking from that EC Comics lore certainly felt right for the time.
Right. So, we'll talk more about that as we go along. But we'll go ahead and start with the cast. So, obviously, there are 5. Well, should we talk about, I guess, the stories? Or
just overall. So there's a framing device, I guess we should say.
So there's a framing device at the beginning about this little boy who's wanting to read his basically EC comic book called Creepshow. It's basically similar to that. And we'll talk about that in a minute about who the kid's actually played by. I didn't know this until now. But the father throws it away in the trash can, and that basically the whole thing is like the wind is flipping through the comic book, and it goes to these different basically stories that are in it, and there's 5 of them. First one's called Father's Day. Second one's called The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill. Third one is Something to Tide You Over. Fourth one is The Crate, and the fifth and final one is They're Creeping Up on You. And then, I don't remember exactly what had happened, but that at the end, but the epilogue, the dad gets killed or something, or maybe it had happened earlier than that. That the revenge happens to the dad or something.
Dad's drool, boys rule. Like the whole vibe.
But anyway, I don't remember exactly how that. But so the stories, we had said this kind of last week. Overall, all of them are really pretty good. The only one that we're not that crazy about is Father's Day. The first one, it's really basic.
And also, I kind of always thought that, and then reading the reviews, Canby and Ebert, they both kind of singled that one out as a more disposable one.
But so we'll go through the cast here. For the prologue and epilogue, Joe King is Billy Hopkins. That's Stephen King's son, who's the writer Joe Hill.
Oh, okay,
I didn't know was his name. Or that's who that was.
Right.
Now that I see it, I saw it earlier.
Yeah.
We were watching somebody. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is him. But
that's
interesting that he's in this movie. But yeah, we can talk about that more later. As Billy Hopkins.
Yeah. Which sounds like a very Stephen King character name. Imogene
Saraceni as Billy's mother. She doesn't have a Wikipedia page, I'm not sure. And then the father, uncredited, which I find hard to believe, is Stan Hopkins, Tom Atkins, who's been in a lot of different movies. He has worked with Shane Black, William Peter Blatty, John Carpenter, Fred Deckard, Richard Donner, Stephen King, and George Romero.
A lot of horror stuff then, yeah.
So yes, he was in The Fog, The Night Configuration, Escape from New York, Creepshow, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Night of the Creeps, Lethal Weapon, Maniac Cop, Two Evil Eyes, Bob Roberts, Striking Distance, My Bloody Valentine 3D, Drive Angry, Encounter,
Drive Angry 3D,
and Trick.
Drive Angry was also in there.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess it wasn't part of the name, though. Let's see if there's any other movies here. That's pretty much all the big ones, but yeah,
Lethal Weapon.
He's been in a lot of horror movies around that time, John Carpenter stuff, and
just looks like, I mean, no offense to him, just generic white guy to throw in situation, you know what I mean? So,
and then Marty Schiff and Tom Savini is Garbage Man 1 and 2. Of course, Tom Savini did all the special effects for this movie also, which are really good, as always, but of course a big...
but he obviously famously worked on...
Yeah.
Dawn. He didn't do Night of the Living Dead, did he?
But he did Dawn and Day of the Dead, both of which are very impressive. Funnily enough, he's always said about Day of the Dead that he read the screenplay for that, the full... Because that movie's going to be like 3 hours long or something. It's supposed to be really long. And that he said that would have been like, the... I don't remember what he did, but the Gone with the Wind of, like... zombie movie that it was like really ambitious and was supposed to be really big, and I feel like there's parts of that still remain in that movie, but we'll get to that movie someday. So yeah, that stuff is an interesting kind of part of the movie, good thing to start in the movie, whatever, kind of like Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
right. So with Father's Day, we've got John Lormer, who was in a lot of TV stuff, it looks like Star Trek, Twilight Zone, Perry Mason, Peyton Place. Let's see if there's other stuff here. Anything random.
No, it's partial filmography. It's like
Tales of Wells Fargo. Always love to see that show up. The Singing Nun. That's that.
Sally Field?
Yeah.
Well, that was a show.
There was a TV show in Italy, I think, too, at one point. Anyway.
I'm thinking The Flying Nun, I think.
Oh, no, that's one. I'm getting those confused. Anyways, he's like this old guy who dies or something, and the family's wanting his money, and then he comes
becomes
back
like a zombie, basically.
Yeah.
So
Vivica Lynn Fors is also in that. I've seen her in certain things. Let's see what they are. Some movies here. Man, she's in a lot of stuff. Selected filmography, and there's this much. Yeah. Dark City, not the new Dark City, but the one from the 50s.
Naked City.
Naked City, yeah. Tempest, Rawhide, The Untouchables.
Well, Naked City TV show, actually. I thought it was the movie. But
12 O'Clock High Bonanza, The FBI, Diary of Anne Frank, Cauldron of Blood. Never heard of that. Welcome to L.A. That's that Alan Rudolph movie. Voices. Oh, that was something else I was thinking of. A Wedding. Yeah, I remember her in that. I was trying to think. I knew it was something we had seen. Girlfriends also before that. Yeah. Dynasty. Yeah, so. Don't even remember. I'll say this is only going to be my second time watching the movie, so there's certain actors in this I don't remember. I'll skip through some of these a little quicker. Ed Harris is in this, is one of the sons, I think, or something, or nephews or something like that. John Amplas is Nathan's Corpse. Yeah, he was in other Romero films, Dawn of the Dead, Martin, other stuff. Okay, so jump into Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill. Stephen King as the titular Geordie Verrill, and Bingo O'Malley as that character's father and the doctor. What do you have to say about Stephen King's performance in this movie? I think there's a lot to say that...
I think sometimes it gets criticized, but all I'll say is I think he knows exactly what he's in and is playing to that, and I think pretty funny. And it reflects his weird sense of humor that obviously is reflective in his books.
I know I'm a Stephen King fan, but I think it's actually really good.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think he's a very funny guy, and he's channeling a lot of that in there. Because, you know, he gets that stigma as being, this weird, and he is a, you know, pretty weird enough guy. I mean, who isn't, I guess. But, yeah, I think it's really funny, but, and a kind of sad performance in certain ways, just because the guy's very,
it's
unfortunate.
It makes me laugh, but he's kind of a punching bag for the movie. And that's something that's, I think, true for a lot of these whole EC comic style of storytelling that this movie reflects is sometimes the sense of cruelty that it inflicts on its subjects. And I know that a lot of people said, they're like telling the morality stories and and I think that's true, but sometimes I think that's true of horror in general as a genre, but I think especially this mode of horror is that it's like, look at these dummies, and like their like morality being falling in on itself and them being the subject of their own faults or frailties or whatever. And there sometimes is a sense of cruelty that comes with that towards the characters, but I think his is he's so goofy and funny that it just works for what it is for me.
Yeah. It's also important to note that there's multiple things here I want to talk about. First of all, that this story and his short story, of course, have to be inspired by Color Out of Space. The H.P. Lovecraft story is very much similar to this. Also, The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill instead of The Lonesome Death of Hattie McCarroll.
Yeah, that's clearly a reference.
But she's a Bob Dylan fan, so, you know, whatever. Something to tide you over, that's the other section.
This is probably the single most star-studded one.
Yeah, with Leslie Nielsen, Galen Ross, and Ted Danson, and Richard Gere as man on TV, uncredited. Right. But yeah, this one, and did we say, I guess the last one, did we say anything about what the last one was about, actually?
Well, it was just like a farmer.
Meteor crashes, and there's this like weird plant that takes over everything, kind of like kudzu.
Yeah.
So, whatever. So, this one, it's like about this cuckolded man who's like basically planning to kill his wife and her lover by burying them in the sand on the beach, and comes in, and then something supernatural happens at the end. But yeah, so Leslie Nielsen, what do you think about him in this performance that you remember of him?
Well, again, he's the perfect type of person to me to put in this, and I think, frankly, what I remember him in this, I think he should have done more horror.
Yeah,
because he's like somebody that we see and you instantly want to laugh because you're thinking about Airplane or the Naked Gun movies later on. But
there's a certain chaos to his aura, though, that I think works.
No,
for
exactly.
horror,
It's just that he's just this very disorienting figure when he's all of a sudden this horror villain, and like I think he should have, frankly, that was an underserved aspect of him that could have been more utilized in other things. But he's really good in this.
Right. Galen Ross, she was in Dawn of the Dead. She was like the main female lead in that. I always thought she was really good in that movie. And I don't remember her as much in this, but I'm sure she's great because she normally is. Let me see if there's some other things she's in here. Not much. Not really. Yeah, she's mostly independent.
She's actually directed some movies.
Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, she actually directed quite a few movies, it looks like. Recently a movie called Beijing Spring, which is a documentary about the basically like free speech in China. So, but yeah, and then of course Ted Danson, who's been in everything. You've been watching Cheers. You have anything to say about him?
Well, we also recently saw Body Heat. You know,
that's right. He was in that.
He was in that. It is always weird not to see him behind the bar, just because he's so good at playing the lead on that show. That, but also there is a certain confidence and sliminess to him that Cheers deconstructs, but that makes for a good, facile, quick version of that kind of guy with this movie. I think.
I agree.
You know.
And then Richard Gere will. I don't know what you have to say about him. I mean, he's barely in the movie, I guess.
Well, in general, about Richard Gere, he's someone that I want to watch a lot more stuff of because I found him to be a particularly interesting male white male lead for a long time. I mean, most memorably in Days of Heaven. I mean, he's.
Do you
really
remember
great
there was
in
that movie
but-
they made a couple years ago that was basically Chappaquiddick, but not? You remember that?
There's like the official Chappaquiddick movie.
Yeah, but it was that movie. I'm gonna try to find it here because I always like to laugh whenever I think about it. Arbitage.
Oh,
it was like this thriller, and it was basically like, he gets crashes a car and I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that
like political guy. In
yeah,
trouble,
it's like a crime drama or something. Anyway, there's like a car crash or something.
But yeah, what I've seen of Richard Gere, I've liked.
Yeah. So moving on to the crate. This is probably my favorite one of the group. Just because
this is frankly the one I don't remember all that well compared to some of these other ones, so I'll be interested to rewatch
well, maybe
it.
I won't like it as much either this time, but I remember it being really good. But Hal Holbrook as Henry Northrup, Adrienne Barbeau as Wilma, Billy Northrup, his wife in it, and then Fritz Weaver, who's in a lot of different stuff, but Marathon Man and Failsafe are kind of two of the main things I think of, and then he's doing a lot of TV. But this all basically, I think they described it as like, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with like a Yeti in it, more or less. So like the whole thing's, I really like the atmosphere of it, that it's like based on this like college campus where there's like these two professors know about some crate in the basement behind these stairs that they never open, and basically it has this monster in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's also about like kind of this like love triangle that's going on or something with all them, and I don't remember exactly what the details are.
Well, again, that whole love triangle, this goes back to this like morality of some of these things, is like, people sinning, or like it's like a very almost old fashioned way of like, you're doing wrong and you're immoral, and so we're gonna hit you and punish you. You know what I mean? Is like very much a part of this moralistic thing. And again, what's interesting is that the EC comics of the 50s, obviously were very controversial in their day, and a lot of them got canceled, and the Comics Code Authority came about as a result of that. That while I understand some of the brutal imagery, and you see some of the old stuff, you're like, why is this in front of kids' eyes?
But I said it last week, it's good that they got rid of that stuff, honestly, because it's interesting, but like, we don't need to be having that, that kids can see that stuff.
I think this is true of horror in general. I think not just this, but like, what's the line between? Well, actually, if you look at the messages, it's actually a very conservative message in terms of its interpretation of morality, or like punishing people in very harsh ways. Or is that just merely a facile excuse to? A second time I've said facile. That's third now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word of the day, I guess. Or is it just a blanket excuse to, if you had this quote message,
to
you
rip
can just
somebody
really
apart.
rip somebody apart, and who cares? And I feel like the horror genre in general is constantly trying to weigh that. How much do we want to quote say it, tell a message, versus do we just want to rip somebody's lungs out? You know what I mean?
So
the moralistic kind of thing.
So what do you think? Any thoughts about Hal Holbrook? He recently passed away earlier this year.
He's someone I've always thought a lot of. The biggest thing I first think of him in, and everybody has their things, I think of him a lot as Preston Blair in Lincoln. He's really great in that role. And actually, I didn't even really know this till he had died, and I was reading some of the New York Times obituaries and stuff about him, that he had made a whole career of like performing these onstage monologues over many, many years as Lincoln himself, but also a lot as Mark Twain, who I didn't really know about.
He looks like Mark Twain,
and that he did a lot of stage shows that were based out of his writings and stuff, these one-man monologues, which I'd be very fascinated to see. And also, like, it gets brought up a lot, but especially after he passed, but he's only in like Into the Wild for like 10 or 15 minutes.
The
but
Sean
that's
Penn film.
But that is just one of the most memorable, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, beautiful performances I've ever seen for an actor that's only in it for that long. And it's a really great just old man performance in that movie. And that's the thing, I've only ever really known him, especially as an old man, in terms of when I've been paying attention to movies. But I mean, obviously, I think most people associate him with All the President's Men, as Deep Throat in that.
Mark Felt.
And then also, speaking of genre stuff here, The Fog, he has a role in that
he's
as
in
well.
That. Yeah,
and
he's
just
really
like
good in that.
And he just seemed like a guy he can do something really big and artistic, and then he's not afraid to do like a horror movie either.
Yeah.
He could really do anything. It seems like, and nothing even too. He was even in The Sopranos for like an episode, sharing a room with like Tony Soprano and
Big Tone
and that like rapper that was also in there, and they were watching a fight together, and he was talking about like philosophy and all this stuff. It's just so love Hal Holbrook and anything he's ever been in. He's really great.
So,
and again, like I said, can do about anything.
Yeah.
He can be in this, or he can be in like Lincoln. You know.
And then what about Adrienne Barbeau? I mean, she's been in so many horror movies and genre stuff. She was also in The Fog, and Escape from New York. But that, let's see what some other stuff is. Cannonball Run, The Thing is the computer
voice
voice.
in Scooby-Doo Zombie Island.
Yeah, it looks like she did do some
Demolition Man.
Yeah. That 2007 Halloween, actually it was cut and then put in it, because I was going to say I don't remember her in that. Argo, I forgot she was in that. But yeah.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy Island, I don't know if she was on. But anyway, yeah, I mean, she fits in with a lot of these filmmakers of being in these types of movies, so she's good. Let's say Fritz Weaver, did a lot of TV and movies, Twilight Zone.
Fail Safe, you had said,
X-Files. Oh, that's what I was trying to think of. I think we watched the Twilight Zone here a while back that he was on. Let me see which one it was. Let's see them. Yeah, Third from the Sun. You remember we watched that here a while back, and he was in that. That's what I was trying to
think. He's also in another one.
Yeah, The Obsolete Man.
Yeah. Never seen that one.
But yeah. So yeah, then jumping over the last one. This, I think, is the one I think of the most, and I think is the most interesting and the most disgusting of the group, is They're Creeping Up on You, which is basically about this really rich, everybody compared him to like Howard Hughes, this like really rich, greedy scumbag who's like a clean freak who lives in this like climate-controlled penthouse apartment in New York City, played by E.G. Marshall, who's he's the only person actually in the whole thing, but there's a lot of people talking to him on the phone. David Early being one of those, and then Ned Beatty as the voice of Bob Bean, uncredited. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But E.G. Marshall, of course, the most famous thing I remember him being in was 12 Angry Men. He was on a lot of TV in the 50s and 60s, because he's in that one thing that was shown on Mad Men, where it's like Mr. Mason, where it's like talking about abortion or whatever. And he was in Images, or not Images. What's that movie? Interiors.
Right.
I
also forgot. I was just looking. I forgot he's the president in Superman 2.
Oh, really?
He's not in that a whole lot.
He's been in a lot of stuff. Really hilarious performance.
Played John Mitchell in Nixon recently. We saw for the
first time.
Oh,
that's right. Yeah, because I thought I'd seen him in something. Yeah, but he's really funny in this really crass, vulgar, angry man who's like his hair looks really ridiculous, and he's got on this like blue bathrobe and these like gloves, and he's just and basically cockroaches come in and eat him alive. So
fun stuff.
Yeah, but so that's it with the segments and the cast. Pretty big cast, obviously. Usually these types of movies can get a lot of different people.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted us to transition to is and kind of this anthology horror movie, and because anthology horror movies, you've seen some from the 70s, and I want you to talk about that a little bit. Tales from the Crypt,
Tales from the Crypt, and then Vault of Horror. Yeah, those are all right. They're the first versions of that to happen. They were actually British movies. Then there was kind of a whole mini franchise of movies where they did those, and then they did like Asylum and Torture Garden and some of those other movies that came out of that were essentially taking stories like that. And
what do you think about the anthology format makes it applicable to horror so easily or quickly?
I guess it's because I I don't know. I think, first of all, think about the fact, that there aren't very many long horror movies.
Yeah.
It's very rare for something like that to happen.
It's like comedies. Comedies traditionally are not longer than 2 hours.
Because these things you cannot sustain. So therefore, maybe it's the idea that it's like
it's like building a quick sensation.
Yes, and maybe it's like, I don't know why they make movies like Movie 43. I guess it's like because you can as a comedy.
It's like a one-off joke or a one-off scare.
You just do that really quickly because you can contain it all. I guess that's why. Part of it is honestly because of the influence of these EC comics that they were able to do that. Comic books in general, because they wanted to. Fill the pages with multiple things because, frankly, it's kind of a trashy medium. You can't really come up with, War and Peace here. You just got to kind of do what you got to do and get the cool thing on the page, or get the cool, scary thing made. It's more about the aesthetic than it is about the story, so therefore I think it applies itself to that.
And it gives it this bite-sized quality that, another thing is, too, that if you don't like that segment, then the next one's coming up,
right.
and, could
and it's the same
itself.
thing with Twilight Zone, is similar with science fiction and horror stuff there. And then, of course, a version of this that would finally get made is with Tales from the Crypt TV show. I want to jump back real quickly to that first Tales from the Crypt movie in Vault of Horror before I talk about that, though, is that first of all, one segment of that was the very famous Robert Zemeckis second episode of the Tales from the Crypt show about the Santa Claus that escapes from the mental institutions, going on a killing spree.
Axe murder.
That was actually in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
That same story was adapted, and it's obviously a 1970s version of that. It's very toned down.
And don't forget it playing in the background of Lethal Weapon 2, which Richard Donner also directed.
Right. Yeah, you're talking about the new.
While they're waiting to see the commercial of the daughter of Danny Glover's daughter, who did a condom commercial, I think it was, or something like that, and that's playing in the background, let's get around and watch that. Blah, blah,
yeah, because that movie is a Christmas movie. Funny enough, also. Around Christmas, I should say.
Is it still? I know the first one was.
Oh, that was in the
second
one?
The second one was.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's even funnier than that. But, but with those original movies, what I like about those Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, is that they have a lot of really great imagery in them, like horror imagery. Like there's that one about that guy who has a car crash, and then it becomes like a POV shot of him walking around and people scared of him or whatever, and then he comes in to his house and stares down at it's one of the most impressive shots in any movie, honestly, I've ever seen, where he stares down at the coffee table, which is made of glass, so it's like a reflection, and you see his face, and he screams, and it's a genuinely really scary, impressive moment in a movie. So I think that's what ultimately to say about some of these movies is the genre anthology stuff, is it's able to get off a lot of these really quick and impressive scares.
Or ideas
that wouldn't normally, or
ideas that work as short stories and maybe not
that wouldn't fit into a larger movie.
Right.
But so is Tales from the Crypt, the TV show, which ultimately this is very much tied to, I think, in a lot of ways, is a show I want to keep giving, benefit of the doubt. I've watched the first 2 seasons, and it's really a not good show.
Yeah.
There are good episodes, but it's like a lot of these, anthology story formats where it's there's some that are good, but a lot of them aren't. In this movie, though, and we'll talk about why this one works, I guess, later, but in this one, I feel like a lot of them are better than not, which is kind of rare, but that's also because you're getting Stephen King and George Romero to actually do it, not Robert Zemeckis and Richard Donner and Walter Hill or whoever,
right.
But was it Walter Hill that was behind that, wasn't it? There were a lot of...
Yeah, I can't quite remember.
I want to see who all produced that, because it was a lot of people. Well, hang on. No, and David Giler and Walter Hill and Joel Silver, all kind of produced that. But, do you have any opinions of the Tales from the Crypt?
I've not seen nearly as much as you have. I remember in the 90s, in the background, that kind of being a cultural thing, and I might have called an episode here or there when we had HBO back in the 90s before we got rid of it, and then we got it back again now. But, it's just, again, anthology in general is a mixed bag of a format, because I think the promises of it are cool, but the reality of it is oftentimes neutered or getting by just to get by, and people love the idea of it but aren't necessarily fully involved the execution of it in the way that they hope that they would.
And that show's trying to do what this is ultimately doing, and what the EC Comics is. It's trying to be kind of funny, but also that show was a big deal, I know, when it came out, because it was extremely violent for TV.
That day,
and now it's still, there's some stuff in it that is still really bad, but it's not as bad now. But it's still, there's still some stuff I've seen from that show that is really far. But that I think that's what people like about this sort of thing, is the kind of cheapness and the comic bookness of it, where it's kind of funny, but it's kind of scary, and it has this kind of moral message. But as far as other anthology stuff that was made later on, I mean, you've seen more of this stuff than me, but these newer movies like Trick or Treat or VHS.
I think Trick or Treat is really good, and I've only seen it once, and it was years ago. So I'd like to see it again, but that is one that is like trafficking and what some of this stuff is trying to be, but I think taking the next logical step in terms of making it, frankly, more intense and, quote, more scary. And I think you mentioned this last week. I mean, the tagline for this movie is the most fun you'll ever have being scared. And it kind of is enjoying some of the campiness of it and not trying to be ultra scary. And not to say that like something like Trick or Treat is trying to be ultra scary, but it is trying to be more genuinely grab you by the throat at some points and like be something that gets under your skin a little more,
right?
As opposed to trying to have a quote morality message, and that being as much a part of it in some ways as the horror is. But that's a really good version of it. I'd like to see that again. VHS. I saw the first one, and my memories that's kind of sketchy, and I kind of like the framing device behind that movie is kind of cool, where it's these people breaking into a house and they're literally like putting in these random VHS tapes they're finding in the midst of robbing the house, and the random horrors that they're uncovering. And I really like the idea of that. And as is the case with most of this stuff, some of them are kind of good and some of them are kind of forgettable or whatever. And it uses VHS as a format to try to augment that. They made like one or two sequels, and I haven't seen those, I don't think. But again, it's something that I would still recommend people to check out if they're interested in this stuff. There was even a Creepshow 2, which we haven't even seen.
Yeah, and then there's a TV show now too, I think. Past that. Yeah, and then there was a Creepshow 3. So yeah, there were a bunch of sequels to these.
There's even also, you mentioned it earlier in passing, the Twilight Zone movie, which is not exactly horror, but is like in the sci-fi horror realm-ish, I guess you could say, in terms of adapting the Twilight Zone.
Right.
And that the whole appeal of that was having all these big directors come in and do a version of the Twilight Zone or whatever.
Right. So I guess we can kind of talk about why this kind of works, and we kind of said it already, but part of it is that you've got George Romero and Stephen King actually making this stuff.
I think really the only person to rival George Romero for me in a serious way in terms of this era of he worked in was maybe Wes Craven to me. I think I might like a little better. But what George Romero really gets, you can go back even to that first Night of the Living Dead, it is kind of this sense of pulpiness and this kind of, barely getting it done type of filmmaking, and it kind of is living on the margins. But the ideas in those zombie movies that he made are very rich and very still much very relevant and last generations, even though they still are very much tied to their time. In the same way, King also operates in the kind of whole like paperback horror writer. He's such a big deal now. He's so ubiquitous that people, I think, take for granted his styles and his gifts as a storyteller, or how good he is at writing. And then they make for a very good match. And I think I would have actually liked to have seen King even have written a feature-length original screenplay for Romero to have made.
Yeah.
I think
because
that would
Romero
have been good. I think, frankly, that would have been good for both of them, because Romero is, while he was a pretty great filmmaker in his own way, is mostly associated with making these zombie movies, most of which are good that he's made, but still.
Yeah.
King, on the other hand, too, as far as his film work, is more memorable or iconic for having been adapted by big filmmakers, whether they be Kubrick, whether they be Cronenberg, De Palma. And, you know, this would be a chance for you to maybe offer up a take on Maximum Overdrive, which he, you know, very famously wrote and directed. As a King fan, as a cinephile, where does Maximum Overdrive fit into you in both the medium of film, but also in the Stephen King oeuvre?
Well, it's not good, so let's go ahead and say that.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, it's hilarious.
I think it's a good distillation of his sense of humor.
Yeah, and I think it. Believe it or not, you might not believe this. I don't know, but the actual short story Trucks that's based on is actually good for what it is. It tries harder to make it a little more serious.
Yeah.
But that. Yeah, I think it's interesting that he only tried to do that one movie. I mean, you know, but it was a failure critically and
I would imagine that he had to get juice to do that from the success of this.
Yeah, I would think so, because this movie, we should have said earlier, it made, let's see, it was made for $8 million. It made $21 million. I was seeing here it said that, hang on, getting all the way down here. All right. Then its opening weekend, it grossed about $5 million. And it ranked number 1 at the box office, replacing First Blood in the top spot.
Yeah.
Had a 5-day total of $8 million, and it grossed 21. Highest grossing horror film for Warner Brothers that year. That's another thing to say, too, is that this was a Warner Brothers movie, but it was made still very much independently. Because that's just the way Romero was around Greensburg, Pennsylvania, kind of near Pittsburgh. That they kind of took an old school, an all-girl school that was empty and kind of converted it into a studio. And they filmed The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill and They're Creeping Up on You entirely there, as well as the prologue and epilogue. And then parts of The Crate were shot at Carnegie Mellon University.
Yeah.
Father's Day was filmed near Pittsburgh. And then Something to Tide You Over was actually filmed at Island Beach State Park in New Jersey.
You know, another random ironic connection between Romero and King that I haven't thought about is how associated they are with where they're from.
Yeah, right.
King, of course, with Maine.
Like the Northeast.
And then Romero with Pittsburgh very clearly.
Right, and so, getting all the way back, yes, I think that he probably wanted to make Maximum Overdrive based on that success, but clearly that didn't work out. And you know what's funny is that with anybody else, that might pose a threat to their career, but it really didn't. Obviously,
that's the thing with him is that he's mostly known in another medium as a writer,
and
so he can clearly do that and it not be quote good or be successful, but he can just go back and
he hadn't even released some of his best works of it coming out after that. You know, I mean, and other great books of his eventually, but that it is interesting though that Romero never directly adapted one of his stories into a movie in itself, like you said. I would have been
like I said, I would have really loved to see them conceive of a feature-length film idea with that. You know, which this is what this is, but I mean, like, not an anthology format thing.
Which I should say, you know, as much as I love Romero, and that's going to say something bad, but he actually didn't make as many movies as I would have liked.
Yeah.
That he really, you know, made obviously the Dead movies, Season of the Witch, The Crazies, The Amusement Park. We're going to jump back to that here in just a minute because that's actually pretty recently. Martin, Night Riders, Creepshow 2, he was a writer on, actually. He didn't direct it. Monkey Shines, Two Evil Eyes, The Dark... Oh, well, actually, no. I thought he did do something. He directed The Dark Half.
Okay.
That Stephen King... I thought he did, but I wasn't sure because I was like, I swear I thought he did do something. Yeah. So he did do that. Okay.
All right.
I don't even know what that's a short film. Bruiser, and then some more movies of the Dead movies. Iron City Eye Kickers. Okay, short film. But anyway, so yeah, I mean he made, you know, some movies, but it's a shame. It feels like he really got stuck in making those zombie movies, which are really great, and they're the best zombie things that exist.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it ain't like, old Scorsese only makes gangster movies. Oh, actually, he does all these other movies.
Right,
It's like he kind of
mostly just.
And that's probably not all his fault either. I mean,
No.
he gets caught in. People get caught into doing that kind of thing.
But so yes, I think that, and he did make The Dark Half. So there you go. But it's a shame he didn't make as many things. That was why it was impressive to see him make The Amusement Park, because that just came out recently. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, we watched that via Shudder, and that was the thing that you can explain the backstory behind this better than me. That I guess that got funding from a.
It was this
religious group, this like Lutheran group of some sort that wanted to make a PSA kind of movie, sort of short feature about aging and ageism, and that the movie that he made clearly wasn't what they wanted or expected. Well, it seems to me he followed the assignment, because it's a really great distillation of that very scary concept of aging and what that feels like, but not to their liking, I suppose. And it makes sense why they wouldn't like it, even though I think it is an artistic rendering of that very idea. But,
I mean, it is really good. If you haven't seen it, definitely go. And I really love the framing device, or not the I guess the framing device, the whole story about this. Just the imagery of it, of an old man kind of beaten and downtrodden in this white room, and the same person, the same actor comes in as a cleaner version of himself with all this optimism, and he's just saying, no, don't go out there, there's nothing out there, and that happens at the beginning, and then all the events happen to the movie, and it repeats itself, and it's this kind of cyclical, it's and it's weird, because a lot of people would look at that now and they would say, what does this have to say about 2021? Which, by the way, it doesn't necessarily need to say anything about 2021, because it was made in the 70s. But you would think, okay, well, we've got other problems other than ageism or whatever. But I still feel like it is.
Well, that's a universal human problem.
That's what I'm saying, that I think people would be deceived if they didn't see that as still a very necessary and dire statement that still speaks the same volumes it did in the 70s, being totally unseen.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that even with a movie like The Crazies or which The Crazies is still pretty similar to his Dead movies, so. But it's good to see something like The Amusement Park, and you kind of think, oh, what could have been a little more of that? And there are other movies of his I haven't seen that are a little different, like Martin or Night Riders or The Dark Half even. But, and even this with Creepshow. But that it is kind of a shame he still didn't get to make some of those other things.
This is among the more broader movies I think he ever made, and it is good to see him work with a talent as prodigious as him and their mediums as King and him. And so, again, I think it's just really cool to see them work together and to get these actors to be these parts.
And another kind of ancillary detail I thought I'd mention is that they're both really big fans, and all these people are, but this goes to show their shared interest. They're both really big fans of I Am Legend, the Richard Matheson novel. Clearly that directly inspired Night of the Living Dead, and in a lot of ways inspired a lot of things that King is obsessed with. So I think it's their shared love of things, that kind of type of horror in the EC comics, that obviously led to this production. And thankfully it's two people who know what they're doing when they do these things. It's not just some Joe Schmo in an attic somewhere or a attic basement somewhere. Either way, who knows? Who knows what's going on either place? That's just like, a neckbeard somewhere without a better term to use for it, that just like, oh, I love these things, let me do this. They actually are artists in their own way, that in ways that kind of like what Tarantino's able to do, are able to take this, what's seen as trash, and actually elevate it to something that isn't, in this case, isn't necessarily something like high art. In their own individual cases, I think they made high art, but out of that. But in this case, it's something that they know exactly what it is, and they're just making it, and it just is a fun, creepy little creep show.
Again, that tagline, the most fun you'll ever have being scared. It's not there. It's there to kind of it's a good, I think, horror movie for people that aren't that want to have that sensation but don't want to have something that's going to keep them up at night, like long hours and something very, very disturbing. So it's good in that way to kind of thread that needle.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a brief break. You're going to hear the trailer for Creepshow, and then we're going to dive right into the movie.
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo. And the creator of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. You'll scream at ghastly ghouls. Cringe at weird kids. And shiver at the doings of evil doctors.
This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill.
Creepshow will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
I will choose free will.
I will choose free will. One more time for you. Go now.
I will choose free will.
And we're back. I don't know why we decided to do that, but whatever. It's our podcast. We can do what we want. So, Levi, it is rated R because...
It's rated R. No, this was before they listed all that stuff. By the way, about that trailer, wasn't it funny how long it took the Warner Brothers logo to get off the screen?
Yeah, I'm going to edit some of that sound out.
So you probably didn't hear it, but
but it just...
But we choose free will.
So
when it comes to animated, when it comes to children's entertainment, I will choose Free Willy. So
I don't think I've seen one of those whole movies.
Free Willy 3, The Rescue.
I remember when they were big back in the 90s. But
anyways, ready?
Yeah. So we're watching the Blu-ray for this. It's probably streaming somewhere right now.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where, but we're gonna hit.
I think it was on Shudder, but I don't have Shudder.
We're gonna hit play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Which we promoted Shudder quite a bit on this specific podcast today.
The old, not the old, ye old Warner Brothers logo, but
I just saw the 70s, 80s I was era. Watching The Outsiders again. So
yeah, better than the new one, but
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. You're gonna ruin my day. You gotta wonder, to be the kid of Romero or Stephen King, do what they do, you probably were exposed to all sorts of stuff so early on in your life in terms of, quote, scary stuff. Love that the wife's mad,
Yeah.
about him hitting the kid as she should be, but not about, hey, wait a minute, you got pornography in this home?
Yeah. Is it his son? It says it's funny. That's just Joe King or Joe Hill, whatever.
You got a Monopoly board up there.
Yeah.
A lot of
this whole room kind of reminds me of that boy in Salem's Lot's room.
Yeah,
that describes.
That's definitely one of my favorite King books. That was the first one I read, beginning to end. I remember.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that whole miniseries
of The Stand
or TV movie?
I've seen,
I'm
sorry,
Salem's
I wasn't
Lot.
listening. Yes, I have. I don't know why I thought it was. No, not really.
I know some people like it.
That was actually, I tell you, Toby Hooper. Yeah, it ain't all that bad. It just ain't all that good either.
Yeah.
Okay.
To his own father. Or about his own father.
Dracola over there.
Yeah. Love all this horror stuff, and then all like, you know, cowboy, and then you got Raiders of the Lost Ark over there.
He's like, oh look, like,
oh, demented freak,
yeah,
like outside my window.
Yeah, it's funny too that, like, that the dad's mad about
the senior senator from Montana, like,
yeah, that he's mad about the comic book, and it's like, what about all the other stuff he's got in his room?
Yeah,
like,
is that who? Well, he just stole all that, like,
yeah.
Love that whole Creepshow / Tales from the Crypt font, you know, like. Just off the top, Hal Holbrook. Love a good special guest appearance.
And obviously, these are, you know, moments from the stories that they're drawing here out.
It'd be a good chance to tell that story about our mom with that comic book that horror comic book she grew up with.
She was telling us about this comic book that she remembered. It was like the I can't remember now what it was called.
It was DC something.
Yeah, it was a DC comic book, but it was about this like ghoul party or something, and they had this like cake on the cover or something. Right. And anyway, she said she used to have it, and so I looked it up and I was able to find it, and I actually bought it for her.
Yeah, but she had a very vivid memory of seeing that.
Yeah, but no, she remembered it very clearly.
Greetings, kiddies. Oh, well,
Father's Day.
Didn't have time to read it all. Father's Day, yeah. So it's Father's Day. This is about like the dad just died, right? And they're all splitting up his.
I don't think he's dead yet.
Oh, yeah. Music in Batman '89.
Yeah,
like
stock,
classy stock music.
Yeah.
For Ed Harris, this is about around the same time, I guess, as The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
Era for him.
Well, no, I guess it has happened already. I couldn't remember. Yeah. Like.
It's like a stamp, you know?
Yeah.
Stamp is a gift. I'm surprised they haven't made gift stamps yet, you know?
Yeah.
Cale Yarborough? No.
Wow.
What a violent, sick people so far. You know? Now, most recently, fairly recently, Knives Out has a whole similar plot in some ways in terms of this.
Yeah.
Obviously, that not just from this, but many other things in terms of like, who really is the person who wanted to kill Christopher Plummer's character, you know?
Yeah.
A patriarch. Almost looks like Anne Bancroft mixed with Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
Father's Day makes you think of Happy Death Day. Have you seen that?
Well, there's a horror movie called Mother's Day that
maybe I'm
Andy
thinking of that
Kaufman
too.
made.
Yeah. What could go wrong in a graveyard?
This whole character, okay, this whole character, the way she looks exactly like a whole like Tales from the Crypt character, just very like morose and like
just
gaudy
asking for it,
and just like like.
Ever heard of anybody really begging for their Father's Day cake?
Yeah, no. Yeah. Wow.
And this puts some borders and backgrounds around some of these shots, obviously, to replicate that comics look.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't feel a lot of sympathy for the fact that anybody killed this guy.
No.
He's just pretty miserable human beings, anybody.
Wow, that was it. Like, but it was enough.
Yep.
Father.
The father, like a hotel room.
Extra large bed, TV, and one of those Father's Day cakes you open with a key. Like, what? Yeah.
You don't sound like you really mean it, but whatever. Which, again, that guy, I don't think I would either. And bring the bootlegging into it, like.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you drink at his grave. She left a 6-pack right there at his grave. I mean, this is a very complicated story. It's not very simple for how simple it is, actually.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so he killed the woman the man she loved, and she killed him, and out 7 years, and then you've got this other part of the family,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's just way too complicated.
Jimmy Bean.
James Bean.
Rock on.
Rock on. No.
Not no mo. Of the flame or the smoke coming up. Whatever.
That music was later used in the Thanksgiving trailer
for
Grindhouse.
Yeah.
Actually, like the design of this, but
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh yeah, it is. I do recognize that specifically.
Meanwhile,
that new hip disco
with Ed Harris doing that, like wow, like a total fool. Oh, let me go outside and get killed.
Let me go outside and direct Appaloosa. Like,
I'll go outside and be Jackson Pollock.
But we all know Ed Harris's greatest performance, though, was at the Cannes, press conference for History of Violence.
What is that? What is that? What is violence? That's what the movie's about. You can tell then he realizes what he's done. He's like, oh crap. Yeah.
I love when he first does it, people start laughing.
And then they're like, oh, yeah.
In some ways, not the craziest Cannes press conference for a David Cronenberg movie. Because the Crash one's pretty notorious, I know, for people going back and forth with the cast and crew. Well, casting Cronenberg. James Spader in particular.
Oh, people not liking it?
Yeah. Steamed mood.
What was it people didn't like about it? I don't know. I mean, I like it, but, it's...
You ever see any when James Spader was on The Office for a brief time?
No.
It was like Robert California, I think was his character.
Oh, I've heard the name. Right? I didn't know that's who he was played by.
Yeah, he was playing a very James Spader Office character.
Like the Blacklist era. Love James Spader. Always good. Very weird, kind of aura, but,
But, you gotta be sometimes.
Would you ever go do this? Just go walk around a cemetery that's got fog everywhere?
Not with the fog.
And there's an old woman missing.
And when you're in a horror movie especially, you're like, something ain't right here. But. So if all
I
those
do remember
things are
that
I'm not
one of the
it.
final images of this story I think is very memorable, but do you remember that?
Not.
You'll see. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, you'll see.
Oh yeah, baby. You'll see. Go, 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 baby. Jimmy Bean, he found.
He's like, oh, look at that.
Oh, look at that. I should have downed that.
I'll do the rest.
Mm-hmm. Like he's surprised what it smells like. Yeah, he'd know. You gonna go out like he's in Batman Mask of the Phantasm?
Yeah.
Huh? She's dead? So you're gonna do anything about moving?
Jake Hogan, boys,
come on.
Meanwhile, what would you do with John Quinones? I remember what we laughed about that. Okay, freak.
Dadgum.
It's mine. Okay.
That disco still jamming. Obviously, there was a lot of anti-disco stuff back in the late 70s.
Yeah, it's interesting
early 80s,
because I like disco fine enough, but I could actually see why people would not have
especially
been
rock
into
fans,
that.
I guess.
Yeah, but whatever. I mean,
I like it.
Especially these people.
Yeah.
Romero and King I would assume they would. Yeah.
Held it more content.
Right. Because King famously his favorite band ever is AC/DC, and then he really loved.
Who scored all of basically?
Who scored Maximum Overdrive? Yeah. And added their own music in there that they'd already written before the movie, but they did, I think, write a couple songs for the movie. But also that specifically in Pet Sematary, which I think is actually one of the most quintessential King novels. That doesn't make it the best one.
Yeah, sure.
But I think is a very interesting book I want to talk about some other time when we have time. But that, and I've talked to you about before why, but I'm saying on the podcast some other time I'll talk about it. But that, anyways, that in that he talked a lot about, listen to the Ramones' song Rockaway Beach or whatever, and like on the radio and like talking about that. I was like, okay, like.
Dang. That zombie design looks a lot like the zombie. That Italian
movie? Yeah, kind of, yeah. That's a interesting enough movie.
You've seen
that,
right?
It's all right. I saw that, and I quite like that, okay, the Lucio Fulci movie. But then I saw that other movie he made, City of the Living Dead. That was pretty bad, so.
Yeah. How are those connected to the Romero movies again? Are they official?
That zombie... Well, City of the Living Dead was not connected to those.
Okay.
That was just its own movie that was kind of a zombie movie. Zombie is like a sequel to in Italy because Dario Argento helped produce Dawn of the Dead, and it was a big hit in Italy.
Right.
So
that was when all that Giallo movies were being made.
So it was made as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Although in name only, it's totally different. Doesn't follow any of the characters or anything.
Right.
But and it's good. I mean, it's not the best thing ever or anything, especially not compared to those movies. But it's interesting in its own way. But yeah, that was the image I was talking about. It's pretty interesting. But by the way, I just want to say about this story now that's over. I know they weren't the best people, but they didn't really do anything to him, though. You know, specifically. But whatever. I don't care.
I'd love to go back at some point and pause those fan letters and see what they say exactly.
Yeah.
But here we go. Here's old Stevie himself.
It's funny, this one just immediately jumps in. It's like, all right. Why would you touch it?
Yeah.
Just keep poking it with something else.
Something I was meaning to say earlier about this story is that its interpretation of alien life is weirdly similar to Invasion of the Body Snatchers in terms of being more plant-based and kind of humanoid.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Department of Meteors. Wow.
It's funny. He's instantly thinking, "How am I going to make a buck off this?
Pay off that bank loan."
You see, I don't know if he has a wife or kids or not.
Nah. This also kind of reminds me of a story that he wrote. I'm going to have to look up the name of it. That was about this astronaut who grew eyes on his hands. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I ain't heard of that.
I've read it, but I can't remember the name. Let me see.
Some of his performances reminded me of like Timothy Oliphant. Not Timothy Oliphant, but the guy that's in Vice Principals and
Walton Goggins.
Walton Goggins, yeah.
I Am the Doorway. That was about like this astronaut got exposed, it said, to an extraterrestrial mutagen during a space mission to Venus.
Okay.
And that he there's like eyeballs in his hand or something, or let me see, on his fingertips, yeah. And that the aliens can see through them or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
But I could see Goggins playing this part, like being good at it. That's the line I always remember.
Yeah.
Are there any King cameos in movies of his own movies that are memorable? Or
well, he was in, of course, the newest It.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was in, of course, in Maximum Overdrive at the beginning of the movie. This computer called me an asshole. He was in. He was like one of the priests in Silver Bullet.
Was he in Dead Zone or Carrie at all? Or?
Not that I remember.
Yeah. That sounds like Vince McMahon almost.
Might have been, I don't know. Yeah, it is him.
Yep.
So Vince McMahon is in this movie, I guess.
No chance. That's what he's got.
Meanwhile,
looks like he could use some vegetation around.
Not that kind, though.
Yeah.
Music.
Who did the score for this?
Let me look.
Love how similar.
John Harrison.
Okay.
Who collaborated a lot with Romero, it says.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I love how also in his imagination how unimaginative they all are. They're all like in the same place, look almost the exact same.
Plus, you can only respect Stephen King for going out there and being like, look at my weird self, you know?
Right.
Like,
Oh, he's putting himself on the line, definitely.
Yeah. Pretty vanity-free performance.
I think so.
It also reminds me of In Thinner, the book. There's a... oh, well, let's see this.
On the tongue. Yuck.
Later. There's a character that some other bad stuff happens to, where he has all this, like, basically these scales that grow on his skin, and it gets to the point where it's in his mouth, and like it's like real bad, yeah.
It's like getting flashes of Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog with this like, stupid plant, you make me look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vodka, that'll fix it. Try the ketchup too.
What?
All that green on his face reminisces some of the big beards he sported over the years during this time.
Yeah, in the late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
You gotta see, he seems relatively calm for what's going on, you know? I mean,
I think it's because he's so dumb.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really catching on yet. American flag there, you know. Wow. Oh, it ain't no dream, buddy boy. All right.
It's like he's gonna be the next Swamp Thing.
Adrienne Barbeau was in Swamp Thing.
Mm.
How is this happening?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's the question for this whole thing, but
if it's making him hallucinate or what.
Okay.
It's like he wants it so bad. Look how sparkly it looks. Don't you love that grain prices update?
Oh, yeah.
It's a great way to wake up every morning.
This is where it always goes, I guess, in these situations. Wow.
R.I.P.
Castle Rock. That's a real dark ending too. That it's like all of the world will become this, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Voodoo doll.
I love when you get old comics, anyways, and sweet superhero comics, especially when I'm more familiar with, and just all the random old weird ads and send in this for this. Like, and I always wonder if try to still do that. What would even if you didn't get a response?
Yeah.
Like, some I would imagine you get like a LOL good one, bro, but nah.
That may work on TV, mister, but I can bench press 300 pounds. You better get your foot out of the door when it's about happening.
Don't call me mister. You know damn well who I am, so let's not play any games, huh?
Well, get out of here.
You listen to me, Harry, and listen carefully, unless you let me in and talk to me something very nasty. That kind. So nasty. Your little mind.
Wow.
So speaking of Leslie Nielsen, we have got the Police Squad show on Blu-ray. Haven't watched that yet. I know there's not much of it, but that one season. He's one of those faces again. You can't help but just see and start laughing in your head, just thinking about all the stuff he's said or done.
There won't be any alimony, none of that community property shit. She just wants out.
Well, I don't know whether I'm in love with or not, Harry. That doesn't matter. The point is, I keep what is mine. No exception to that rule ever.
What did you mean? You said something nasty was going to happen.
You really should take better care of this equipment. These get a maintenance departments the best of heads. Take your hand.
Wow.
A lot of like do this now, right now, you know.
That's something I want you to hear.
On a road near the shore.
On that one road.
Don't go down that road. Vickers.
Like I was saying, him just saying all this stuff with a smile is really what adds the dimension of the scariness to his character. Yeah.
Okay.
Harry, here's something I think you'll find interesting. You see that down there? What? Burial mound with my lady fair? Could be. Notice how the water creeps in? Even when the tide's out, the water creeps in. I don't know what the hell you think.
Don't bring a shovel to a gunfight, you know the old saying.
This is gone. It's about far enough.
No, Harry. Not nearly far enough. Now, if you're thinking of becoming a hero, I suggest that you remember the lady fair.
Well, he says that without any, like, rhythm or comedy at all.
The lady fair.
Jump into that hole.
Go on, get in there.
Well, if he went all the way out there and dug that hole,
yeah,
ahead of time, like.
It'd be funny if in the middle of all that, a dog came and crapped in it and then left. And
yeah,
then,
he's like, even better.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
even more pungent. Yeah.
Good boy, Harry. Good boy. Now, Harry, I want you to kneel down and start pulling the sand into the hole.
No way. You can go ahead and shoot me if you want it. You're not going to bury me alive.
Not a bad idea. Not exactly what I had in mind, but all I want to do is incapacitate you, then you can see Becky.
in a sick sort of way.
Yeah, you shouldn't believe him. No, just in case you didn't remember. Bird's like, nah, we done.
Wow.
That's something you ever said to a student, like
in a certain, not with a gun pointed at him, but
not even a water pistol.
I wonder how long that took. About 5 minutes.
Yeah. But just like, you know, it said later on, it was like guesstimating 5 minutes later.
Yeah. Guesstimate. Brad Pitt and Killing Them Softly, like that little bit of like slapping.
It's interesting. It just dawned on me that this is like in the daytime on the beach, like very much environments you don't associate with horror.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Richard Vickers, that's a name. Singing "I'm Just Wild About Harry."
Roaring Twenties throwback.
But Mary. So no animals harmed in the making of this Creepshow.
What if it says that in the credits?
All the effort he's going to.
I know. It's almost like it's really not worth it.
So yeah, this is happening at the same time, I guess, further down. Or whatever. A lot of technology having to work very specifically here, but yeah.
I mean, demonstrably, yes, but I should have asked the same question to Ted Danson as Brad Pitt asked Edward Norton in Fight Club. You ever watch a snuff film?
Yeah. Not Edward, or that was in...
I know, what was that in?
That was in The Counselor. But it might as well have been in Fight
Club.
Oh,
I was thinking of Brad Pitt's voice, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah. Never mind.
More music that's in Thanksgiving trailer. I'd forgotten that music was from Creepshow.
As someone who likes to take other people's work and music and shuffle it into my own stuff, good for you, Eli Roth.
Just gonna leave, like...
Clearly demented individual. What a troubled old man.
Well.
Oh, no. Be a pretty miserable experience.
Yeah. This is also in Thanksgiving track. This is all this music. What a random choice.
Yeah.
What? Okay. So he's just totally, obviously insane.
Yeah.
I mean, we
What
already
he
knew
does
that.
for a living, I wonder.
I don't know. Never says.
Could have got some money. Maybe he's a TV producer or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that describes the amorality and evilness.
Wow. Watching.
Little strut.
Yeah. Wow. Was it not fun anymore? Like, that's a shame.
It's lost the
Leslie Nielsen.
Fun I was having.
What an era, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You would probably start getting delirious to a point because salt water makes you, like, crazy if you drink too much of it, supposedly. It's not like regular water.
He must have had him in there super tight because there's part of me that always think, oh, couldn't they have wiggled out? But I get it. You know?
Yeah. Who you talking to? Richard Gere? What? Like, what an image that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he's leaving behind a lot of physical evidence that would be very easily traceable to him.
But he owns the whole place.
Oh, that's true, I guess.
Wouldn't you think they'd be coming looking for these people eventually, though?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be that hard to get those bodies out of there, though, eventually. You know what I mean? Like, it would just come around and wash itself out. He's crazy, though, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The music of this and the imagery reminds me of Carnival of Souls. You remember the end of that movie where it's kind of on that like beach looking area?
Yeah.
Which of course Romero is a big fan of that movie, so.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, I'm feeling empty inside. Like,
it's almost like their murders didn't help my soul. Actually,
how was he able to see that on that screen, by the way? Here's that idea, the maid's been moving my stuff. Like, what?
He's been moving my murder tapes around.
Yeah.
That necklace he's got on.
Yeah, I've been looking at that for a while.
The whole fit he's got is something.
Okay. Yep, took it off. Obviously going back to his zombie roots here.
This is something that I feel like only adds to the uselessness of the first one. Is like, if you're going to kind of do a version of this, just do it with this version as opposed to that. Because with this, we actually get to know Nielsen's character and what he did as opposed to just being told about the things the other people did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, another reason to maybe cut the first
It's just
one.
more masterfully directed, too, and looks better, is more interesting.
And has this darker sense of humor about it, too, even. Yeah.
Is there anything that we do like about that first? Jimmy Bean, James Bean.
I mean, had some moments. Ed Harris dying in the cemetery.
Happen. Yeah.
Well, just showed straight up full frontal nudity, like
of Leslie Nielsen. What's funny, about Leslie Nielsen, we should have said this earlier, is that he was known for this very serious part actor in these sci-fi movies, like Forbidden Planet or whatever, and then that he made a whole career of making fun of himself, parodying himself, basically.
Yeah.
After
and
that,
more people honestly know him from the second
which
thing
is strange.
Yeah.
There's that same ashtray.
Yeah.
Wentworth. That's his name. Just think about that. This is a nice house.
Yeah. Imagine the property values getting ready to go down.
Or up. Wow. Wow. Tom Savini's like, oh, I love this smut.
Yeah.
He just have his little freak out moment here.
Just stops Well, okay, he moved. I do love how confident he was and so much in the early part of this, and now he's just a sniveling, baby now at this point. Tables have turned.
Oh! That's a pretty good jump scare there. Not.
That freeze frame.
Wow.
Freeze frame. What's next? Uh-oh.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I remember this one being my favorite one the first time I saw it, but I might like that one better this time. We'll see. Wow. Okay.
Like that one coin really gonna turn his fortunes around. Who could this be? 1834? Is that what it said on there?
I think so, or 1934. Couldn't see.
Oh, just call me Billy. Everyone does. You need someone to show you the ropes, hon. You just come see me. I know all about the doors. Oh, you buying or renting? Oh, well, actually, we're renting at the moment. It's just as well. Buying real estate in a college town is a friggin' pain in the ass. You take my word for it.
Henry is in the English department, and Wilma...
Oh, just take care of Henry. Believe me, he needs it. Did you ever meet a mannequin? What's the matter with you two? You're not drinking?
Actually, we just got here.
No, we're not worthless human beings, like in your case. Now, apparently, this was filmed in like Romero's backyard or something.
Yeah. I could kind of see that, I guess. That Elliot Gould and Henry Gibson just gonna be walking, talking in the background, a la the Nashville, barbecue scene.
Right. This is an interesting whole kind of thing about the idea of like, you know, and there's been certain things about this, but like university relationships between like professors and you know.
Mm-hmm. White Noise is a version of that as far as university campus life working there or whatever. Satire of the 80s. During the Jackson administration.
Yes, that's like a freeze frame they had there. Freeze frame.
Yeah, on both. Then when the other guy started talking, I freeze framed another one. I guess like comics is just in, you know. Wow. About direct.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, maybe I should. Arctic expedition, it says too. So another, like, you know, this along with the thing, like, don't go missing in the Arctic.
Yeah. That you know, that couple that was in that a minute ago, I realized that was I think George Romero's wife. Okay. I'd forgotten that. Christine Forrest, because she was in she was assistant director of Dawn of the Dead. I feel like I've seen her in some other movie though too. I can't remember what it is. Yeah, she was in Dawn of the Dead. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Nothing's gonna ruin all of our lives. What? I don't see why spending time with the sun. If you're staring at the sun, that's a problem. But
Yeah.
Don't just leave the pot soaking like I did last time. Throw them put them away. You and your intellectual friend are gonna play chess. And you have to leave a mess for me. What's the stove? Kindly have him out of here before I get back from my classes. Frankly, that tobacco he smokes makes me want to growl. Yes, Billy. Yes, Billy.
Okay.
What would you do with that?
Oh, Henry.
Mm-hmm.
What a random couple.
Yeah.
Just visually. What, the locks? Like,
Yeah.
what would they be worth? Like,
You know, a random thing I'm noticing with this movie, I think that you can apply this across the board, films sense, is that how comfortable this movie is having people just that are older as
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
know.
now you see a movie that does a similar thing, and it's just like, oh, let's like make them no more than 40 some years old,
Right.
and everybody's super young just because like
yeah.
this one's very comfortable with having people that are just a little older to be characters.
Partly, yeah, because the filmmakers knew a lot, you know, that
Yeah,
was the
that
people
has-
they
that
work
plays-
with,
yeah.
too. But, yeah, no, I mean, it used to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of ageism, I mean...
Now it's like, I don't know, Chris Pratt, he might be too old for this part. Like,
And younger people were fine with that back then. They didn't care,
yeah.
you know.
And now I'm not entirely sure if it's young people today don't want to see that or they're just not provided that and they
Yeah.
wouldn't really care either way. I don't know. Is that a gremlin in there?
Gonna get swept up in there. It's gonna be it was a good death, like, you know, not really.
Fall vibe.
Wow.
What even is that? Like a werewolf?
Like a Yeti or
Yeti,
something.
yeah.
Vaguely.
Vaguely a Yeti.
Wow. Yeah.
Fine gristle.
Wow.
Imagine being that actor just doing all having
Going,
like, this hero.
Creature gibbering.
Stop speaking that creature gibberish.
Both belong on a hell of a tooth. Got some Tasmanian devil instead of pink elephants. I think I'll,
So I was looking, this story was based on a short story that King wrote.
Okay. It had already written, I guess?
Yeah.
It's always a great model of sanity, gibbering to yourself, you know. Charlie, he looks like a model grad student, don't you think?
Yeah. Whoops.
How big that flashlight is, by the way.
Yeah. That's the way flashlights used to look, you know.
Yeah. Charlie, look at it. You want to measure the bite marks?
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that'd be the first thing I'd want to do. Measure them bite marks.
In the corner. Well, that's not good.
Yeah. Kind of like the Harry and the Hendersons, like,
yeah,
you know, Bigfoot, whatever. Getting a thrashing.
You know what of course, the question on everybody's mind right now, how'd this thing stay alive that long?
Yeah.
Did it, like, hibernate or something? Like, wow.
It was, like, let out ever so many years to feed and then put back in. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. This Fritz Weaver performance is just like another level of insane.
Yeah.
He's just like, what's going on?
Who's dead?
You need to calm down, buddy boy. Wow. Yeah.
He nearly bit me. Thank God for Henry, you know. Just...
Yeah.
I mean, this Holbrook fit, by the way, too.
Yeah, love it.
I mean, Samuel Clemens, the next generation, you know.
I mean, he liked to drink Mark Twain era. It is interesting, you know, that all this is happening, and the first thing he's thinking of is, that's the way I can get rid of my wife. Like, that's what you're going to be thinking about?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, go. If you heard that, that was
so we got another monster in here.
Yeah, sorry. It's in my crate.
I just love when something totally involuntary.
I just love when something gets all up in your grill.
Yeah. Your McGriddle.
Yeah, I mean, this thing got up in his grill, I'll tell you that. God. What an awful mess.
Yeah, something's going on.
What's going on in there?
There's a
oh my God, a jump scare.
Oh. Ah!
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, do that. Do your thing.
Run feet. Love how he just believes it too.
Yeah.
From the in the first place, he's like, okay, well, I guess it's there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what happened. I don't know.
No, he's telling the truth.
Now, I don't know about you, but whenever whose blood is that? Who even knows? Whenever I get to go to school and wear jeans and like and a shirt or something, I feel like I'm in like, you know, like college professor like casual mode. You know, you're like, I'm a teacher, but like taking it easy today. You know, kind of era. Yeah.
I remember subconsciously, I think when I was in middle and high school, and I would, on Fridays, sometimes I would notice teachers wearing, you know, jeans or t-shirt, and I'd be like, why aren't they all dressed up, kind of? But now I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, definitely any chance, you know. I mean, try to keep the fit strong nonetheless, but, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's not making it worse than what it is.
Great voice.
Yep.
I'm ashamed to tell you this, but ever since Dexter's wife died, he's had problems coping with certain young female grad students. He's been able to cover up several incidents, but this one looks very serious.
So I got new dirt.
It seems he got a young woman to accompany him to Anderson Hall under false pretenses and then attacked her.
Red. This is a horror movie. Gibbering.
Yeah, a lot of gibbering.
I tried to get him to tell me what had happened to the girl, but for the most part he only kept repeating, "It's awful, Amy. Wilma, would you come out here? I know it's asking a lot, but you're always so clear-headed about these things. I know how you feel."
Interesting Adrienne Barbeau performance, because normally she's a very like level-headed, nice.
Probably, on her part,
like,
want to do something different like this, you know.
I also forgot until now. I just remembered she was on that show Carnival. I watched some of.
Yeah. I don't know what the time run-throughs on all these are. This seems like a longer one.
Yeah, I think it's the longest one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I think they kind of get longer as they go.
Yeah.
Because I think the last one might be the longest. It's either this one or that one. Remember, this is the same movie as Where's My Cake?
Where's my cake?
My Father's Day cake. Like, wow.
We're gonna, next time it's Father's Day, we're gonna have to make big deal about
my Father's Day. And we're not even fathers, but, and our dad's like, what are y'all talking about? Like, do what now? It's like, she comes. I am coming, as Bela Lugosi once said. Which makes no sense, but...
The Burger King.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're thinking, what? Like, go read Against the Day. And you'll know. All 10 pages.
But I haven't even done that yet. Huh?
All 10 pages of it.
Yeah.
More like 1,100.
More like 10 times that.
Yeah.
No, actually 100 times that. Excuse me. Think about there's a book that's like 10 pages. Well, actually 100 times that.
Yeah.
What are you doing creep-showing around down there?
What are you doing being a creep in this creep show here? What a portrait of depravity this all is, you know?
Mm.
What are you laughing about? Your best friend gets in a scrape with a girl and you're laughing?
There's a funny side to it, Wilma. Where did it see? Tell yourself.
You're hysterical, Henry. Just what I would have expected.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. This would be a... Yeah.
Where do you see? That's what's so funny. The girl has crawled under the stairs, and she won't come out. All curled up, baby.
What did he do?
You beat her up, Billy. I know you beat her up. Give it a try. No, how to handle this thing, Billy? No problem. No trouble. No. Give her up.
Doing, Henry? What are you doing?
What I should have done a long time ago. Get in there, Wilma. Tell him to call you Billy, you bitch.
Stop it! Stop it, Henry! I'll scream!
Scream all you want. I'll help you. Wake up! Wake up, whatever you are. Wake up! Wake up! Dinner time! Boys asleep! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!
Whoops.
It got full. All done.
That was just great. You think this is a Friday night fight? Huh? Is that what you think? You want to see some real punching? Same old Henry, afraid of your own shadow. You know what, Henry? You're a regular barnyard.
Wow.
Barnyard exhibit.
Chicken guts, piggy friends, and shit for breakfast.
Yeah.
No good at making money. No good at making an impression on anybody. And no good at all in bed.
Wow.
When was the last time you got it up, Henry? Huh? When was the last time you were a man in our bed? Get out of my way, Henry, or I swear to God you'll be wearing your balls for earrings. And I swear to God, if you ever touch me again...
Oh, just tell it to call you Billy.
Ugh. I would have respected the movie so much more if he would have just straight up vomited in the hallway.
Yeah, and slipped on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love slipping on vomit. Well, you know.
That's that.
Not a lot of healthy relationships in this movie, you know?
No. That's what I think about this one is so interesting is that it's like, at its base level, it's about this weird ape in a crate from the Arctic.
Yeah.
But then it's also about this, like, troubled marriage at this, like college.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like multiple things that don't really fit together exactly, like,
Yeah.
but
they somehow coincide.
No.
It was a Candyman, you know, Thomas.
Oh. I don't remember how this ends.
I don't really either.
The crate is at the bottom of Ryder's quarry. I drove out there with the remains of 3 human beings. Well, 2 human beings and Roma.
Insulting his wife to the very end.
How much would it eat? I think maybe at the very end, they began to suspect what was happening.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's an interesting
Got the
decision.
V-neck.
A lot of interesting decisions in this
Yeah.
shot.
No evidence of foul play. I've seen that. No bodies.
Or, as Billy Corgan once said, nobody smell like you. Nobody. Love is. Oh. There's probably gonna be some kind of crap where it's like it pops out and kills him or something like here at the end, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you actually kind of definitely did, but
If you saw the way I chained it up, you wouldn't worry. That thing is drowned in its box 70 feet down. Relax.
It's getting out. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger.
yeah, it's interesting, yeah, that one doesn't end definitively. That's why I didn't remember, because I was like, well, dude. Interesting that this one doesn't see a definitive end or like definitive revenge or like moral comeuppance, you know. Not sure what that means, but
yeah,
you know. All right, prepare yourselves for this one, folks.
Mm-hmm. Masking up for it was cool. Wonder how he would approach the whole COVID era, you know, if he would have lived.
Be easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he's like real. It's real personal.
Yeah, I
with
remember
him.
this one being really profane, of course.
Yeah.
That's so dumb because that's like saying no more air in this building.
Yeah,
like,
there's
it's
no-
like
yeah.
what? Like that would frankly be easier to do.
Yeah.
Than bugs, because then you just make it like a bank vault.
Mm-hmm. We gotta listen for Ned Beatty's voice in here.
You believe that vacation? I told them I wanted to hear from him within the hour. Within the hour. And he now has exactly 26 minutes to go, or he can stay on vacation permanently.
His favorite word.
What are you doing in the office at 9:30, George? There's no overtime at the executive level now. Oh, yes, sir. I know that. Pacific Aerodyne. They're done for. They've had it. Norman Assemeyer's a dinosaur. Too fucking blind to find his way into the nearest target. Almost 7, George. People are out there on the streets dying of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Don't you think it's just crazy, by the way, that, like, he's like, oh, I don't want any germs, and it's like he's the only one touching any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't talk to you now, George. Not going to have any bugs in my building. I loathe bugs. Loathe them.
I get that he's got to be all, well, this. Wow. But the only thing is just crazy that, oh, that guy killed himself. But why would he have everything be white in there, you know? Like, I know that he's a clean freak, but having something, I guess, so he can see it more
that's what I was
clearly,
thinking,
I
yeah,
guess.
so you
but
more clearly see whatever. He's worried about all that, and his hair looks like absolute abject garbage, but, you know. One thing I've kind of always wondered about this movie and some anthologies in general is that the extent to which the orders of the entries are shuffled around. That if was this always, quote, the last one, or was it like another one the last one? You know, how does that work?
Right. What an image that is, you know?
Imagine like looking out your window and seeing that.
Yeah. It's totally insane. He's gonna waste the whole can.
Yeah. He's gonna need it coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait a little longer.
Wow. Wow.
I wonder where he ranks as far as the dirtbag level of this movie, you know, because Leslie Nielsen was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, Hal Holbrook
nobody's
wasn't
as
great
bad
either.
as Vita Pierce, though.
Yeah.
You know, we rewatched Mildred Pierce
Right.
that night. Good
Yeah.
Lord, what an evil person.
Love his little things are like almost like pneumatic tubes in terms of the sucking.
Yeah. Where is it all going?
Yeah.
Would you mind telling me who gave you my private number? I'd like to fire him. Well, I can't fire him, can I?
It's kind of hard to see the subtitles during this section of the movie because everything's
Yeah,
white. And
yeah.
like, wow.
You like your job, Reynolds? Sir, I've spoken to Mr. White. It's on desk. Do you like your job, Reynolds? Yes, sir. I'm glad to hear it, because I want to see White. Almost order of Canada. And if I don't first see White, and then the exterminators, within the space of a half an hour, you will have no job by midnight tonight, you understand me? And then next year you can take your wife and kids to Disney World on your fucking welfare check. You got that?
The subtitles didn't add the effing in there.
Yeah.
You know, this is on your welfare check.
Are we together on this? That seems very out of his character
Yeah.
to have a jukebox in there, by the way.
Everything else is just so white. And
Yeah.
there's just this very colorful jukebox there.
That's all they are. All of them.
Cool guy, you know. Very nice guy. Creepshow up on you.
What even is that?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Oh my god.
It'd be disgusting.
Like cereal
Yeah, I guess.
or something.
Why is he doing that with cereal? I don't know.
He's a weirdo.
Yeah.
Oh my god. How did they even get in?
Yeah.
That's the question. I guess that's what he's mad about.
Mm-hmm. So he's a racist too, you know.
There he is. Wow.
Like you said earlier, he's just gonna run out of this stuff.
Why is he talking to her? Though supposedly, there were 20,000 cockroaches used in this segment.
Boy. I wonder if they have a cockroach wranglers back then.
But that supposedly Tom Savini used a lot of like nuts and raisins in the scene later when they're all over the place.
Okay. So I know now when they even do stuff like that with bugs, they have to have professional wranglers to make sure they're safe. I don't know if they take those precautions.
Yeah,
back
I don't know. It's not going to work out for him.
So looking at the times, I think the last one was the longest.
Yeah.
This is nearly over.
I would just run out in the hallway at this
why
point.
not?
You would be better off.
Wow, they're in the jukebox. I mean, he can be.
Wow.
I just love that, the bitter end, he's just like having to bring that into it like that means anything.
There they come.
Spooky. I mean,
he ran out of spray.
Yeah, we called it. Well, personal he takes it. Like they really care about him.
Yeah.
It's almost like his whole success he's had in his whole career was just so he could get away from bugs.
Yeah. Wow. Sick.
I mean, this would be, awful.
Yeah.
No question.
Wow.
This is something else here. This is one of the nastier effects Tom Savini's ever done.
Oh, yeah, it's impressive.
Oh.
Wow.
was end up being the word of the, the skit, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow.
Just an aside, anybody who says skit over sketch or whatever is, no, thank you.
Yeah, that one obviously was intended to be a gross out, but I think it's good. I mean, here comes the man himself.
Mm-hmm. Didn't hear Ned Beatty, by the way, on that.
No, he was in there somewhere probably, but oh well.
What?
Wow.
Well, you gonna find out.
I just love that Stephen King's son doing that. Ready for another shot, Dad? It was all a comic book the whole time.
Oh my gosh. What is reality? So we were the Creepshow the whole time?
Yeah, it's important to note, I'm sure you've heard this before, that Tom Savini took a lot of inspiration for his effects from being a combat photographer in Vietnam, some of the stuff he saw, so there you go. Maybe he saw somebody torn apart by cockroaches, I don't know.
Yeah. Jungle bugs.
Cletus Anderson. Good old Cletus.
Oh, by the way, director.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
But yeah, it's still good. How do you think it works as a whole? Like in terms of, we kind of said the first one a little more cuttable.
Yeah,
the first
I think all the other ones are good though.
Yeah. But we did get to see. I want my Father's Day cake.
Yeah.
Can I have my Father's Day?
And Harris, yeah. Can I please have my Father's Day cake, please? And we got to see Ed Harris be like, whoa! And then
So do you have a definitive favorite out of all those?
I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I do really like the Something That Tied You Over one. Actually, might be the best one.
Yeah.
But the crate one is really good. I think it's between those.
It's between those two. Yeah, I would agree.
It's funny. The other two are about something like get like on your skin, either bugs or. Which interestingly, follow me here, I know it's called Creepshow, but something it keeps talking about is gonna sound like Chewbacca puts hands behind head move, but it's like, I mean, every one of these stories is about something creeping on something. I mean, you could say about a lot of horror stories, but like a zombie or like a plant or water creeping up to get you, or
it's all about very physical sensations.
Right. It's about all these very. I mean, I know it sounds dumb to actually say out loud, but
that's true.
But anyway,
very true. So, Creepshow, good start to Spooktober specials.
Spooky.
And up next, we're actually going to make history in a variety of ways. I think with this, our second edition of this year's Spooktober special is Funny Games. from 1997 in Austria, 1998 here in the United States. And what's historic about this is it's, for us, our very first foreign language film on the podcast. We've talked about some other ones in the future maybe doing. And so this is likely not going to be the last. We have plans for other ones. But Funny Games, obviously, we're dealing with director Michael Haneke when we deal with this. He actually even remade this film, English language version, about 10 years after 10 years after that. And it was a pretty divisive movie. I'll go ahead and be up front. I don't really like this movie, but also think it's a very important and valuable movie to talk about because of what it's trying to say. What about Funny Games to you? This goes back even before I think we were going to do some horror themed stuff in October. Yeah. This was a movie we talked about doing. What about this for you is something that is worthy of discussion or worth talking about?
Well, it's complicated because I like Haneke's films that I've seen, but I also find him to be a pretty pretentious and kind of what's the word? I guess morose and cynical
nihilistic
person. Yeah, nihilistic. I don't know him personally, of course.
Just based on his films.
Yes, and I mean, but I think his movies are valuable at the same time, like what you said, that I mean, they're very basic, like European art cinema, in the sense that they're always decrying society and capitalism, and and I get that, but I think sometimes that's like, okay, whatever. But I think his movies are important and interesting in that sense. I guess I've seen 4 of his films. I've seen The Seventh Continent, which was his debut, a pretty sobering, pretty interesting movie about a family that decides to kill themselves because of the life within capitalism or whatever. Benny's Video, that's a very that's also a very sobering movie about a boy that it's actually played by the main of the 2 younger kids in Funny Games. The 2 perpetrators, the kind of main one of those is in that as the lead. The titular videographer, if you will, I guess, of him. He kills this,
Benny himself.
Kills this girl with a cattle gun, and like films it, and then it's about his parents trying to like cover it up for him. Actually, the dad in that movie is the adult dad in Funny Games too. So it's interesting to see them in the same movie. And then 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance, I think.
Every time I would feel like giving you a round of applause every time I hear you say that whole title.
I think is actually his best movie, and that's about all these different people. It's kind of like a hyperlink movie about all these different people that are involved in a bank shooting in Austria, like this mass shooting that's on like Christmas Day or around Christmas. I can't remember exactly when it is, but and then Funny Games, of course. And that Funny Games was the first I saw, though, and I think that it's actually kind of his quintessential movie in a lot of ways, because I think that I've seen so far, because he's made movies like The Piano Teacher later on that is a little bit more of like a drama, or or even Cash or Cachet.
It was a movie he made a few years ago that kind of got some Oscar attention.
Oh, Amore. Yeah, I think that's a little more of like a drama as well. But he specializes in these more nihilistic kind of social films. And Funny Games, in a lot of ways, is I think the most quintessential of the ones I've seen. It reminds me a lot of Scream in a lot of ways. It's only like a year after. But that it's about this family that goes on this vacation to their like vacation home and is held hostage by these 2 young men, and basically they're like slowly, not exactly, I guess, well, I mean, very violent things happen to them, but it's not tortured in a typical sense of when you hear that word of like they're held down and waterboarded or something like that. But it's like
it is a torture, though.
But it is. It's this. But I'm saying it's not
psychological.
It's not even that direct. It's this kind of even more almost excruciating form of torture that is very hard to watch. But of course, the movie, as we'll talk about, I guess it's sort of a spoiler to say, but not exactly, because it is kind of known this about it. is very much wink wink at the audience about itself, and is very much showing that it is a movie, and that it's aware of that. And of course, his whole point of the movie is to be very critical of violence in movies, and particularly American films, I think, of course. But he originally wanted to make the movie in America, but he didn't get the funding, so then he felt that he had to remake the movie in America about 10 years later, with like Naomi Watts and Tim Roth randomly, neither of whom are American, by the way. And Michael Pitt.
Excuse me.
But I don't really know why he would, because I feel like he said everything he needed to say.
I guess he just knew that instantly, it being in English, there'd be more of an audience to see that movie.
But nobody saw it, I don't think, and
that's
nobody
its own
cared.
problem, yeah.
And his original movie has far more of a lasting impact. But what's interesting about that movie, though, and we can talk about it next week, of course, is that it like another movie that we're going to do later in this series this month, actually isn't as violent as people remember it to be, and it's the, the, dare I say, genius somewhat of the filmmaking itself renders it as being more violent than it actually is, and makes you think that it was worse than what you actually saw. At least in my memory, I remembered that about it, that it actually pulls punches visually.
Yeah.
That it doesn't emotionally or kind of aesthetically, but in the visual sense, it's actually not as far as you would think.
Right.
Which is hard to believe. If you've seen the movie, you're probably thinking I'm like saying it ain't all that excruciating or hard to watch, but it certainly is.
But it's about, it makes you feel that way more than being very overly violent in the movie.
Which is interesting that he chose to do that in the case of what he's trying to say with the movie. But I guess the reason we're doing it is because, first of all, it's a little bit different of a horror movie. Because it certainly is a horror movie, but it's not supernatural, and it's not explicitly. I mean, it's a home invasion thriller in a lot of ways.
It's not supernatural, but the whole meta-textual nature of it makes it in some ways instinctively one, too. But,
and plus, it's a foreign movie. We've been wanting to do something like this. We just felt like it was something different for this group of movies that we're doing.
And I want to stress, like, it's not a movie I'm a fan of, but obviously what it's talking about is very, very important. And I, for one thing, even though I don't quite love the execution at all times, do respect that Haneke was going to do something like this. But it almost feels as though sometimes when a movie like that, and we'll delve into this next week, and it's trying to implicate the audience in its love of violence for the sake of violence, is actually in of itself as a creative being exercising violence for the sake of violence and delighting in it. And that people might can quibble with that, and I understand if they would. But again, like, I think it shares a similar relationship to Scream, a movie that I like quite a bit better. Love that movie. And recently we rewatched it. Maybe we could talk about those two in tandem in relation to the moment that they came into the world in. But again, it's a harder movie to like than Scream 2. And it knows that. You know what I mean? Scream is trying to be
a popular movie,
entertaining Hollywood product. And that movie is trying to be intentionally, shocking and grotesque. And it would be easy to say, well, I'd rather watch Scream, but does that make the other one more, quote, inherently better just because it's harder to watch? I'm not necessarily sure if that's the case, but nonetheless, it's a conversation that we decided would be worth having.
and I like funny games, but very tempestuously, because I feel that there's a lot of things, and also, honestly, it's a movie that I hate to admit that I would love. I actually don't love it, but if I did, I'd never tell you, because
it'd be like it's a class of movie like Fight Club, and it's very 90s movies of that time, of that ironic 90s take. We're just so much smarter than you, and if you don't like it, then you're part of the problem, right? Or the vibes that both movies like that put out, So
also memorable use of music in that movie, if you remember.
I mean, it's very it's a movie that has stuck with me, and there's a lot of movies like that I don't particularly like, but I remember and stick with me much more than movies that I like better on paper.
And I think that other than Benny's Video, his other movies are actually better that I've seen. So that's at least some sort of, I guess, recommendation.
But I guess for a lot of people that would be an entry point. But
yeah,
and
it was
a shocking
for me.
movie,
yeah,
and then
for you too, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, so
for me, I'll be honest. We had talked about this months in advance, and we were hoping to have, me especially, see more of Haneke stuff. And frankly, we'll just run out of time, and we haven't had.
Well, they're not the cheeriest movies to watch at all either, and I honestly didn't want to put myself back through some of those experiences.
No, I'm saying for myself, I feel like I dropped the ball. I'm not seeing some of it.
And I wanted to watch more of his stuff too, and I just didn't. But yeah.
But so just go into that being aware of that. You've seen more than me, but so that does it for our first installment of the Spooktober special. Next, though, the way we want to end these episodes is playing off a little bit of music that means something to us
in a certain way.
In particular, there's a particular CD that we, as a family, listen to a lot over the Halloween season because I don't remember when this was bought. This was
it would have been in the 2000s.
Sometime in the 2000s. Yeah. Give us the name of the album here.
It's called Trick or Treat Halloween Music, and it's from a company called Drew's Famous Party Music. It's also known kind of now as Drew's Famous Entertainment. But basically these people by way of this kind of musical group called the Hit Crew, that they basically make covers of famous songs for party music.
Yeah, so you can tell this is just a CD that is likely designed to be just put into like a CD player at a Halloween party,
right?
And is gonna basically just be background music for the party festivities, basically. Right. And we're not going to go through the whole list of these because some of them we want to save for the future that we're going to play out.
Yeah, but I'll first of all say about, and I haven't heard any of their other entertainment stuff.
Offerings.
Let me say, but I have to say with this, the Hit Crew or whatever they are, they make pretty convincing covers.
No, they sound as someone who kind of grew up with listened to some of these before I heard the real versions. I mean, they sound very convincing in a lot of ways.
And so it sounds kind of like we're making fun of the whole thing, but I'm genuinely often impressed by.
Yeah, we say it with love, actually. I think
because these are a lot of songs we heard for the first time and. Maybe somebody out there knows what we're talking about. If you don't, go look it up.
But you've seen plenty of these before in the past. These like generic party music CDs or whatever. And again, these are the covers that we're going to be playing, not the original versions. So just be prepared for that.
Yes.
So we're going to play one today, 3 the next 3 weeks, and then a special Drew's famous the last episode.
Right.
But the very first one we've already talked about and even had this song in some ways on the podcast back when we did.
It had to have been flagged, I'm sure.
The Color of Money, which was Werewolves of London. Originally it was Warren Zevon who did the original version. Any thoughts on the song?
Well, it's a song that I think a lot about, actually, because it randomly gets played on the radio year-round, like it's a pretty, famous song. There's some other songs on here that are really goofy, too, that we're going to talk about in depth later.
Mm-hmm.
But that song is just so goofy. I mean, like, if you really just listen to what it is saying, I mean, it literally opens with talking about a werewolf wanting to go to a Chinese restaurant to get some beef chow mein. Like, what the heck? And then talking about him, what is it? It's like Saul Lon Chaney walking with the Queen doing the Werewolves of London. And then Saul Lon Chaney Jr. walking with the Queen doing the Werewolves.
It's pretty wild, by the way, that the Queen that it's making mention of at that time is still
our
the
Queen.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, not our Queen, but not anybody's Queen. But we're not monarchists on this podcast, even though we watch The Crown.
Yeah.
Well, what's even better about that, though, is that we don't have to have an opinion on that because we're not English.
Yeah,
so
we can just shrug and go, that's their thing.
But anyway, I think it's actually a pretty stupid song, to be honest. Like, sorry if there's any fans out there. I don't really get what it's going for, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I guess. I think it's funny.
I mean, I think it was used very well in Color of Money. With Tom Cruise playing that, and it's a very weird place to use it, but I think it just Scorsese knows music better than either one of us.
So, do you have any thoughts on the song?
It's one of those songs that every time you hear, you kind of get into and listen, and then again, like you said, you pick apart the lyrics and you're like, "What is this about?" Like, I mean, there's a werewolf in London, American werewolves in London.
Well, that's because originally that movie was named that as like a joke on An American in Paris.
Yeah.
And it was like An American Werewolf in London because the song was famous and they wanted to use the song, but they couldn't get the rights.
Right.
So that's why it's not in the movie. But it kind of is in the movie because it's the name. Right. I mean, it's not, literally. So another lyric I wanted to harp upon before you hear the whole song in just a moment is the moment that's like, hound around your kitchen door, better not let him in. And then, what... I love like the quick vocal delivery of "Little old lady got mutilated late last night."
I mean, all the hoops you got to jump through to get to that. Yeah, wow.
But I have to say though, this version we're going to be playing, like I said, I'm pretty sure we found the cover version, so you're going to get to hear the cover version.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the song.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting though is it's a little bit of a gruffer delivery, so I actually prefer this version to the real version.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
But we're weird that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next week, funny games. Have fun with that.
Have some funny games, I guess.
So this is Kyle.
This is Levi.
Take care. God bless, and hey, watch out.
Yeah, don't be walking around that kitchen door, okay? Like, you better not.
There's a werewolf of London about, so take care and God bless.
I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, walking through the streets and so in the rain. He was looking for a place called Lee Ho Fooks, gonna get a big dish of beef chow mein. Ah, ooh, werewolves of London. Ah, ooh, ah, ooh. If you hear him howling around your kitchen door, better not let him in. Little old lady got mutilated late last night. Werewolves of London again. Ah, ooh, werewolves of London. Ah, ooh. Ah, ooh, werewolves of London. Ah, ooh. He's a hairy-handed gent who ran amok in Kent. Lately he's been overheard in Mayfair. You better stay away from him. He'll rip your lungs out, Jim. I'd like to meet his tailor. Ah, ooh, werewolves of London. Ah, ooh. Ah, ooh, werewolves of London. Ah, ooh. Well, I saw a long chain walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw a long chain of Junior walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's.